welcome to Tales in the Dark. I know many of you enjoy relaxing with these videos, so I recommend turning down the volume until my voice is barely audible. It'll make the experience even more soothing. Before you close your eyes, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you and enjoy listening. Story 1. I'd always kept that old shed locked. It was falling apart, barely standing. But this morning the door was cracked open and something inside had swept the dirt into neat piles. The air smelled like wet bark and rotting straw. When I leaned in, I heard a voice, not loud, not angry, just asking softly, "Do you have a name I can use?" I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The shed should have been empty. I'd cleared it years ago after inheriting this house from my grandmother. Yet there it was, a whisper floating from the darkest corner where sunlight couldn't reach. "Hello," my voice cracked. "Who's there?" No answer came, just the subtle shift of shadows against the back wall. I squinted, trying to make sense of shapes in the darkness. My rational mind insisted it was nothing, perhaps a radio someone had left on, or the wind playing tricks, but deep down I knew better. I backed away, pulling the door closed and sliding the rusty bolt back into place. My hands trembled as I secured the padlock. Whatever I'd heard, I'd deal with it later, with more light, with more courage. That night, sleep evaded me. My bedroom window faced the backyard, and from my bed I could see the outline of the shed against the night sky. A faint glow emanated from inside, impossibly soft, like candlelight through dusty windows, but the shed had no windows. I pulled the curtains closed and buried my face in my pillow. The next morning, I convinced myself it had been a dream. The mind plays tricks when old houses settle and memories of childhood fears resurface. But when I went outside to check the mail, my eyes drifted to the shed. The door remained locked exactly as I'd left it. Yet around its base, wildflowers had sprouted overnight, a perfect circle of blue petals that hadn't been there before. I knelt down, touching one delicate bloom. It felt waxy, unnatural against my fingertips. "They grow for those who listen," came a voice behind me. I spun around. No one was there, just the empty yard and the distant sound of birds. My heart hammered against my ribs as I hurried back inside, locking the door behind me. That evening I sat at my kitchen table, staring through the window at the shed. The logical part of my brain suggested calling someone, a friend, the police, anyone. But what would I say? That flowers grew too quickly, that I heard voices from an empty shed, that I was losing my grip on reality. Instead, I grabbed a flashlight and my phone. I would document everything, prove to myself that nothing supernatural was happening. The metal of the padlock felt cool against my skin as I unlocked it. The door creaked open, and I shone my light inside. The dirt was no longer in piles, but arranged in intricate patterns across the floor, swirls and lines that almost resembled writing in a language I couldn't read. My flashlight beam caught something else, a small notebook on the workbench that I was certain hadn't been there before. Its leather cover was cracked with age, its pages yellowed. "Are you going to give me a name now?" The voice was clearer this time, emanating not from a corner, but from the very air around me. My mouth went dry. "What are you?" "I'm what waits between moments," it replied. "I'm what lives in forgotten spaces. I need a name to become whole." I raised my phone, recording the empty shed. "There's nothing here," I whispered, more to convince myself than anything else. "Look at your screen," the voice suggested. On my phone's display, where the empty shed should have been, stood a figure, indistinct, like smoke given human form. It raised a hand toward me, fingers too long and joints too numerous. I dropped the phone, backing away. The device clattered against the dirt floor, screen now showing nothing but the empty shed. I fled, slamming the door shut, my hands shaking so badly I could barely secure the lock. That night my dreams were filled with whispers. I saw the figure from my phone screen walking through my house, touching my possessions, learning my life. It opened my books, studied my photographs, sat in my chair, always asking for a name, always waiting for my answer. I woke to find dirt on my sheets, the same dirt from the shed floor, arranged in those same unreadable patterns. My phone contained no video from the previous night, just a single photograph of my own face, sleeping, with something shadowy leaning over me. The rational explanations were evaporating. I was either experiencing something beyond understanding, or my mind was fracturing. Neither option offered comfort. I decided to face it. When darkness fell, I returned to the shed, this time without a flashlight. The moonlight filtering through the roof's gaps would be enough. I unlocked the door with determined hands and stepped inside. "I'm here," I announced to the emptiness. "What do you want from me?" The air shifted, growing dense around me. The smell of wet bark intensified, mixed now with something metallic. "Just a name," came the reply, closer than ever before. "A name binds me to this world. A name gives me form." "Why my shed? Why me?" "You have the right voice, the right blood. Your grandmother knew this." My grandmother, who had warned me never to open the shed, who had kept it locked with chains until her dying day, who had burned all her journals before passing, leaving me with questions she took to her grave. "If I give you a name, will you leave?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. A sound like soft laughter rippled through the darkness. "Names don't work that way. Names are invitations, not banishments." Something brushed against my arm, not a touch, but the absence of one, as if the air itself had been carved away in the shape of fingers. I shivered despite the summer warmth. "What happens if I refuse?" The presence circled me, its movement disturbing the dirt at my feet. "Then I take pieces of yours, bit by bit. I've already started." With dawning horror, I realized what felt wrong since entering the shed. I couldn't remember my middle name, the street where I grew up, my mother's birthday. Small details were missing from my memory, excavated like the dirt on the shed floor. "Stop," I gasped. "Please stop." "A name," it insisted. "Just one name." In desperation, I thought of my grandmother, of her warnings, of her secrets. What had she known? What had she protected me from? And then I remembered a word in her journal before she burned it, a word she'd written and crossed out repeatedly, as if afraid of its power on the page. "Vashur," I whispered. The air in the shed vibrated. The dirt rose from the ground, swirling around me like a miniature storm. Through the chaos, I saw the figure forming no longer smoke, but something solid, something real. Its eyes opened dark pools reflecting nothing. "Vashur," it repeated, tasting the name. "Yes, this binds us now." The dirt settled. Before me stood a person, almost human, but wrong in subtle ways. Skin too smooth, fingers too long, smile too wide. It extended a hand toward me. "The binding goes both ways," it said. "I have your memories, you have my presence forever." I didn't take its hand. Instead, I backed toward the door, understanding with terrible clarity what my grandmother had protected me from, what I had just unleashed. "You can leave the shed now," I said, my voice barely audible. Its smile widened further. "I already have." I turned and ran toward the house, but I knew the truth as my feet pounded against the grass. It was too late. The naming was done, the invocation complete. That night, as I lay in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, I heard movements throughout my house, soft footsteps, the gentle opening and closing of drawers, water running briefly in the bathroom, the sounds of something making itself at home. "Thank you for the name," Vashur whispered from the foot of my bed. "Now shall I tell you mine?" And in that moment I realized my terrible mistake. I hadn't given it a name, I had given it power. And what it offered in return wasn't its name, but something far worse, a truth I wasn't ready to face. I feel it watching me even now as I write these words. It learns from me daily how to move, how to speak, how to pass as human. Sometimes I catch glimpses of it practicing my smile in mirrors, perfecting my walk down hallways, rehearsing my laugh when it thinks I'm not listening. The neighbors have started to comment on my twin, the figure they sometimes see through windows or walking in my yard at night. I tell them it's a relative staying with me. Soon, I won't need to explain at all. Because every day I fade a little more, and every day Vashur becomes a little more like me. The man in the shed asked for a name, and I gave him mine. Story 2. As the sun set through my blinds, the furniture cast long, familiar shadows across the walls, but one of them wasn't shaped like anything in the room. It was tall, narrow, and didn't touch the floor. The air smelled like warm dust and cedarwood, but the corner where the shadow stretched was cold to the touch. I turned off the lights. The shadow stayed. I blinked hard, expecting it to vanish. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, making out the familiar shapes of my dresser, desk, and bookshelf. Every shadow aligned perfectly with its source except that one. It remained motionless, a dark silhouette against my pale wall, resembling a tall figure with unnaturally long limbs. Curiosity overrode my apprehension. I approached it slowly, my bare feet silent against the wooden floor. The cold intensified with each step forward. When I reached out to touch the wall where the shadow fell, my fingers met an unexpected texture, not the smooth paint I knew, but something almost velvet-like, dense and slightly yielding. I pulled my hand back as if burned, though the sensation was ice cold. "This isn't happening," I whispered, my voice sounding foreign in the quiet room. The shadow seemed to pulse slightly at the sound, as if breathing. Sleep eluded me that night. I kept the bedside lamp on, watching as the shadow remained fixed while other shadows shifted with the movement of car headlights passing outside. I took photos with my phone, but the images showed nothing unusual, just a normal bedroom wall. I recorded a video, narrating what I saw, but the playback revealed only my trembling voice describing something invisible to the camera. By morning, the shadow had faded to a faint outline. I convinced myself it had been a trick of light, or perhaps the beginning of a migraine aura. The human mind excels at rationalization. That evening, the shadow returned with the sunset darker now and slightly wider than before. I placed a chair in front of it, testing its reaction. The chair cast its own shadow, which overlapped with the anomalous one. Where they intersected, the darkness deepened to an impossible black, as if creating a hole in reality itself. I decided to document everything. In a new notebook, I sketched the shadow's dimensions, noting how it changed. I recorded ambient temperatures, discovering the air around it was consistently 15 degrees colder than the rest of the room. I installed a small digital recorder near the wall, hoping to capture anything unusual. The next morning, I played back the recording. Amid hours of silence, at what must have been the deepest part of night, I heard soft scratching sounds like fingernails against drywall. then whispers too faint to make out words, but unmistakably speech-like in rhythm and cadence. I became obsessed with understanding. I researched shadow phenomena, optical illusions, and psychological manifestations. Nothing matched what I was experiencing. I avoided mentioning it to friends, fearing they would question my mental state. Instead, I created an anonymous post on a paranormal forum, describing my experiences without expectation of serious responses. A single reply appeared: "It's watching you. Do not interact with it further." The username disappeared when I tried to respond. That night, the shadow had arms, or what looked like arms, thin extensions that reached outward from its central mass. One stretched toward my bed. I put pillows along that side, creating a barrier that offered no actual protection but gave psychological comfort. The scratching on the recording that night was louder, the whispers more urgent. When slowed down and amplified, I could make out a single phrase repeated: "Let me in." I covered the wall with a sheet. The shadow appeared on top of it. I installed bright lights aimed directly at the wall. The shadow darkened in response, as if feeding on the illumination. I tried sleeping in another room, but dreamed of the shadow growing larger in my absence, spreading across my bedroom walls, ceiling, floor, waiting for me to return. So I did return, determined to confront it. "What are you?" I asked the shadow directly. The temperature plummeted. My breath formed clouds in the air. The shadow rippled, its edges becoming less defined. The extended arm-like projection elongated further, reaching toward me. Where its tip touched the floor, the wooden boards darkened as if being singed by invisible heat. My phone rang suddenly, an unknown number. When I answered, I heard the same whispering from my recordings, now directly in my ear. I dropped the phone, backing away from both it and the shadow. That night I set up a mirror facing the shadow, angled to reveal the wall behind me while I sat on my bed. I watched, taking notes, observing. Near midnight, something in the reflection changed. The shadow wasn't just on the wall anymore, it had depth. It protruded slightly, like a bas-relief, slowly pushing through from the other side. I approached the wall again, driven by a compulsion I couldn't explain. The cold was intense now, painful against my exposed skin. I pressed my palm against the shadow's center. The wall yielded slightly, soft and pulsing. I pushed harder. My hand sank in up to the wrist, enveloped in a cold so severe it burned. I tried to pull back but couldn't. Something held me there, something gripped my hand from inside the wall. Panic surged through me. I yanked with all my strength and fell backward as my hand came free. My skin was unmarked but numb, as if frostbitten. In my palm lay a small, dark object, a piece of paper, folded tightly, blackened at the edges as if charred. With trembling fingers, I unfolded it. Inside was a drawing, childish, done in crayon, of a tall, thin figure standing in a bedroom. My bedroom, recognizable from the distinctive window and furniture arrangement, but the drawing showed details of my room I had changed years ago. In the corner, a signature in awkward, childish letters, my name. I had no memory of drawing this, but the paper was old, yellowed with age. That night I heard knocking from inside the wall, soft at first, then increasingly insistent. The shadow had gained definition: a head, shoulders, those unnaturally long arms. It no longer merely suggested a human form, it mimicked one precisely. In desperation, I pulled out old photo albums, searching for any connection to my childhood fears. In a faded photograph from my 7th birthday, I spotted it in the background, at the edge of the frame, a tall, dark blur where no person had been standing, the same proportions as my wall shadow. The whispering on my recordings became clearer. Remember me. You invited me. Remember. But I didn't remember or didn't want to. I found myself standing before the wall again, listening to the knocking, watching the shadow pulse with each impact. The wall bulged slightly with each knock. Something wanted out, or wanted me in. "Who are you?" I asked again. The knocking stopped, the shadow stilled. Then it changed shape, contracting and reforming into a perfect silhouette of me, my exact proportions, my posture, even the tilt of my head as I stood questioning it. "You know who I am," came a voice from everywhere and nowhere, sounding like mine but wrong, hollow, distant, reversed. The truth crashed over me in fragments of memory, a childhood game, an imaginary friend who wasn't imaginary, a door I had opened in this very wall when I was 7 years old. A promise made to a presence that lived in the spaces between light and dark. "You promised we could trade places," the voice said, my voice but not mine. "One day," you said, "just for one day." My hand moved toward the wall without my conscious decision. The shadow me mirrored the action, reaching out from its side. Our fingertips met at the boundary between wall and air. The cold intensified, but beyond it was something worse, a yawning emptiness, an absence of everything. The wall between us thinned, reality stretched like plastic wrap pulled too tight. I tried to step back, but my feet wouldn't move. The shadow self leaned forward, its featureless face now inches from the surface. The wall bulged outward, a dark hand pushing through into my world. With tremendous effort, I tore myself away, stumbling backward, falling to the floor. The protrusion receded, the wall becoming solid again, but the shadow remained, watching me with an attention I could feel. I stay awake now, watching back. I've pushed my bed to the opposite wall. I keep every light on, though it makes no difference to the shadow's presence. I've nailed boards over that section of wall, an ineffective barrier that nevertheless gives me the illusion of control. The shadow waits. Sometimes it takes my form, sometimes it stretches into impossible shapes. It knocks, it whispers my name. I know what it wants, a promise fulfilled, a door reopened, a trade. Each night the wall grows thinner between us. Each night I find myself standing before it without remembering having crossed the room. Each night my reflection in the mirror looks slightly wrong, my movements delayed by half a second, my expressions not quite matching my emotions. The shadow in my bedroom doesn't match the furniture, and soon, I fear, I won't match myself either. Story 3, I thought it was a faulty water line, maybe rust in the system. But no matter how many times I cleaned the tray, the ice cubes refroze with a pink hue, cloudy and streaked. The air around the freezer carried a sharp scent, coppery, like pennies left in vinegar. I finally cracked one open with a spoon. Inside was something soft. At first I thought I was imagining things. The soft core looked like a tiny piece of tissue, no bigger than a grain of rice. I flushed it down the sink and scrubbed the ice tray with bleach, letting the caustic fumes burn my nostrils until I was certain nothing could survive. That night the kitchen felt different. The refrigerator's hum seemed to pulse with an irregular rhythm, like breathing. I stood in the darkness, watching its outline, wondering if appliances could develop personalities after years of service. Morning brought new ice cubes, pinker than before. When I cracked one open, the core was larger, about the size of a pea, with what looked like tiny filaments reaching toward the edges. I photographed it with my phone before disposing of it. The image appeared blurred despite my steady hand. I took another, blurred again but differently, as if the thing had moved between shots. I emptied the ice maker, unplugged the refrigerator, and let everything thaw completely. Water pooled on my kitchen floor, and I noticed it had a pinkish tinge. As I mopped, I found small gelatinous clumps in the water. They dissolved when touched, leaving nothing but a faint, greasy residue on my fingers. That night I dreamed of swimming in a vast, cold ocean, something brushing against my legs. Not seaweed, something with purpose, gently wrapping around my ankle, testing my solidity. I woke to the sound of ice cracking, not the familiar settling noises of a freezer, but deliberate, like something trying to escape. When I opened the refrigerator, which I had reconnected before bed, all the surfaces were frosted over. The ice tray contained perfect cubes, crystal clear this time. I felt a flicker of relief until I noticed that the inside of the refrigerator door was coated with a thin film of condensation that seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at it. I wiped it with a paper towel. The towel came away pink. I decided to document everything. I set up my old digital camera on a tripod facing the refrigerator and let it record. The first few hours showed nothing but normal kitchen activity, the refrigerator cycling on and off, light fluctuations as clouds passed outside my window. During the night, the video became grainy. The refrigerator door appeared to vibrate slightly. I enhanced the footage and noticed what looked like condensation forming and unforming in patterns on the refrigerator surface, almost like writing. When played back frame by frame, I could make out what seemed like words. Feed me. I convinced myself it was an artifact of the compression algorithm, my mind seeking patterns in visual noise. But doubt crept in like cold air under a door. The next batch of ice cubes came out perfect, clear, pristine, normal. I dropped one in a glass of water with a sense of victory. But as it melted, tendrils of pink spread through the water, not dissolving but extending, like fingers unfurling. I held the glass up to the light. The pink material seemed to respond, retreating from the brightness into the center of the remaining ice. When I put the glass down, the tendrils reached out again. I needed answers. I collected samples, water from the line, melted ice, swabs from the inside of the freezer, and convinced a friend who worked at a university research lab to run some tests. Just concerned about bacteria, I explained with a forced laugh. While waiting for results, things escalated. The refrigerator began making new sounds, not mechanical failures, but organic, wet. Sometimes, when the kitchen was quiet, I heard what sounded like swallowing. The samples came back inconclusive. Organic material present, but unidentifiable, my friend said. Structure similar to neural tissue, but not matching any known species. There was concern in her voice. Where did you get this? That night I unplugged the refrigerator again and sat watching it in darkness. The inside shouldn't have remained cold for so long, yet frost patterns continued forming on the interior glass. By morning they had coalesced into a recognizable shape, a face, or something trying to be a face, with hollows for eyes and a gaping mouth. I reactivated the refrigerator to see what would happen. Within moments, the frost face melted, dripping down the interior like tears. The water pooled at the bottom, finding its way back to the ice maker. I began noticing changes in myself. Food lost its appeal. Water tasted stagnant unless it was ice cold. I developed a sensitivity to warm temperatures. My skin felt tight, especially around my joints, as if something underneath was straining against it. Dreams became more vivid sensations of floating in darkness, of presence all around me, of voices that spoke without sound, communicating directly into my mind. They told me I was becoming something greater. I started keeping the ice. I filled bowls with it and placed them around my home. The cubes melted but left behind minute pink particles that coalesced when no one was watching. I'd enter a room to find small puddles that would scatter like mercury when approached, seeking out cracks in the floorboards or electrical outlets. My friend from the lab stopped returning my calls after I sent her more samples. The last message I received read only, "This isn't possible. Please tell me where these came from." I noticed thin pink veins appearing under my skin, starting at my fingertips where I'd handled the ice. They progressed slowly up my arms, not painful but sensitive to vibration. When the refrigerator cycled on, they tingled in response. The changes accelerated. My bathroom mirror revealed patches of skin becoming translucent, underlying tissues taking on a crystalline quality. My eyes reflected light differently, scattering it into prismatic patterns. One morning I woke to find my bed sheets damp and cold. My body had begun producing a thin layer of frost while I slept. It melted with my body heat, but left behind the now familiar pink residue. I should have been terrified, but fear had given way to curiosity. Something was transforming me, yes, but also communicating with me. I began to understand that the refrigerator wasn't the source, it was a portal, a junction between states of being. The entities, I came to think of them as such, existed in a dimension adjacent to ours, one where the laws of thermodynamics operated inversely. They fed on heat but needed organic material to anchor themselves. The ice was their method of transit, their way of slowly introducing themselves into our reality. My home grew colder each day, frost patterns appearing on walls far from the kitchen. Neighbors complained about electrical disturbances. Birds avoided my roof. I stopped leaving my house. The outside world felt increasingly hostile, too warm, too bright, too chaotic. Inside, the temperature continued to drop until my breath clouded continuously before me, hanging in the air like fog. The pink veins spread throughout my body, connecting in intricate networks visible beneath my skin. I began to perceive new colors, to hear sounds beyond normal range. The entities communicated more clearly now, showing me glimpses of their world, vast, dark, peaceful, eternal. They were ancient, they were patient. They had tried before many times to establish footholds in our dimension. Usually they were discovered and destroyed before taking hold, but I had nurtured them, given them time to adapt and grow. "We come with a gift," they told me, "transcendence." I understood then what they offered, an existence beyond my limited human perception, beyond mortality itself. The price was becoming a conduit for more of them to enter our world. My refrigerator no longer needed electricity. It hummed with its own power source now, frost patterns constantly forming and dissolving on its surface, spelling out messages that only I could read. The ice it produced was deep crimson, each cube containing swirling galaxies of microorganisms. My skin hardened into something crystalline yet flexible. The pain of transformation faded as nerve endings were replaced with something more diffuse, more sensitive. I began to perceive the world as patterns of thermal energy rather than light. Visitors stopped coming altogether after the postal worker found me standing in my kitchen, frost emanating from my body in visible waves. I overheard the whispered reports, the house that freezes cameras, that kills cell phone batteries instantly, where compasses spin wildly. I made one final recording, my voice now distorted by vocal cords partially crystallized. I remain myself, I insisted, but I am becoming more. The camera shut down mid-sentence, its battery drained and covered in frost. Now I wait, neither human nor other, a bridge between states. My consciousness expands daily, connecting with others like me across vast distances. We are few but growing in number. The entities whisper of a critical mass, a tipping point approaching. Sometimes, in moments of fading humanity, I wonder if I've made a terrible mistake, but such doubts dissolve quickly in the cold clarity of my new awareness. The ice in my veins no longer feels foreign. The house around me transforms, surfaces hardening into crystalline structures that pulse with slow, deliberate rhythm. And somewhere in another home, another person stands before their refrigerator, puzzled by ice cubes that freeze with a strange, pinkish hue. They will crack one open soon. They will find something soft inside. And we will welcome them into the cold. Story 4, it leaned against a tree on the trail, a canvas propped carefully, colors vivid and glossy. It showed the exact clearing I stood in, including the path I had just walked, down to the broken branch I had stepped over. The air was thick with the scent of oil paint and damp leaves. I touched the canvas. The paint smeared beneath my finger, and in the distance, something moved. I drew back my hand, a smudge of crimson staining my index finger. The wet paint had transferred not just to my skin, but somehow stained the sleeve of my jacket as well, though I was certain it hadn't brushed against the canvas. I looked around the clearing, searching for the artist who must have just been here. The forest remained silent except for the occasional rustling of leaves in the gentle autumn breeze. "Hello," I called out, my voice swallowed by the dense woodland. No response came. I turned my attention back to the painting. The detail was remarkable, almost photographic in its precision. The way the light filtered through the canopy of trees, the particular pattern of shadows on the forest floor, even the small backpack I carried was depicted with uncanny accuracy. But what unsettled me most was the perspective. The scene was painted from exactly where I now stood, looking forward along the trail I had yet to walk. I took a step back, wiping the paint from my finger onto a tissue from my pocket. The stain on my jacket had grown slightly larger. I pulled out my phone and snapped several photos of the canvas, documenting this peculiar discovery. As I zoomed in on the images to examine the details, I noticed something I hadn't seen with my naked eye, a dark figure standing between two distant trees in the painting, barely visible against the shadows. I looked up from my phone to the actual forest path ahead. Nothing was there. My curiosity overcame my unease. I approached the canvas again, this time carefully avoiding touching the wet paint. Upon closer inspection, I realized the painting contained subtle differences from the actual scene before me. A fallen log that wasn't present in reality, a clearing that seemed wider than it actually was, and that figure a silhouette with no distinguishable features standing exactly where the path curved ahead. I decided to continue my hike, following the trail depicted in the painting. Each step forward intensified a growing sense of wrongness. The air became heavier, almost resistant, as if I were wading through invisible molasses. The forest sounds gradually faded until my footsteps were the only noise breaking the unnatural silence. When I reached the curve in the path where the figure had been depicted, I found another canvas propped against a tree. This one was also wet, the colors gleaming in the filtered sunlight. It showed me standing exactly as I was now, looking at the painting. Behind my painted figure stood another silhouette, closer this time, its arm extended toward my shoulder. A cold sensation pricked the back of my neck. I spun around, nothing was there. My heart hammered against my ribs as I fumbled for my phone again. I needed to document this to prove to myself later that I wasn't imagining things. As I photographed the second painting, I noticed the red stain on my jacket had spread further, now resembling the rough outline of a hand. I began documenting everything systematically. I recorded a video narrating my discovery and the strange details I was observing. I sketched the paintings in my small notebook, noting the differences between them and reality. Writing things down helped calm my racing thoughts, gave me something tangible to focus on beyond the growing dread. "This is an elaborate prank," I said aloud, trying to convince myself. My voice sounded wrong, somehow slightly distorted, as if I were hearing it underwater. I decided to follow the path further, now watching vigilantly for any movement in my peripheral vision. The forest had become eerily still, not even a bird call piercing the silence. The quality of light had changed too, taking on a reddish hue that made the green of the leaves look sickly and artificial. A third canvas awaited me at the next bend in the trail. This painting depicted me from behind, continuing down the path. The silhouette stood directly behind me now, its featureless form seeming to meld with my shadow. But what made my blood freeze was the addition of another element. My jacket in the painting was entirely red, soaked through with what could only be paint. It had to be paint. I reached back to touch my jacket and found it damp. My fingers came away dark red and wet. I turned to run back the way I came, but the path behind me no longer looked familiar. The trees seemed to have shifted position, closing in on the trail, their branches reaching lower, creating a tunnel of twisted limbs and shadowed foliage. I pushed forward instead, moving quickly now, my breathing ragged. The forest floor beneath my feet felt increasingly soft and yielding, as if I were walking on a sponge rather than solid ground. With each step, the earth seemed to pull at my shoes, trying to hold me in place. Another canvas appeared ahead, this one larger than the others. I approached it warily, already knowing I would see myself in it. This painting showed me on my knees, hands raised as if in surrender or supplication. The silhouette stood directly in front of me, now distinct enough to see it held a paintbrush. Behind us both, the forest had transformed into something alien. The trees twisted into impossible shapes, their bark peeled back to reveal surfaces that glistened like wet muscle. I felt my legs weakening beneath me. Fighting against it, I turned to look behind me once more. The silhouette stood there just as it had been depicted in the previous painting, but now in reality. It had no face, just a blank darkness where features should be. In its hand, it held a paintbrush dripping with red. My body moved without my conscious control, my knees buckling as portrayed in the painting I had just viewed. My hands rose in front of me, mirroring the posture in the artwork. I tried to scream, but found my voice gone, replaced by the sound of brush strokes on canvas. The figure approached slowly, each step causing ripples in the air as if reality itself were a liquid medium. It raised the brush and began to paint in the empty space between us. With each stroke, I felt something inside me changing, being rearranged according to its vision. I managed to reach for my phone with trembling fingers. I needed evidence, needed to document what was happening to me. As I activated the camera, I saw through the screen that the figure was not captured in the digital image. Instead, where it should have stood was a canvas on an easel, showing a painting of me holding my phone. The figure continued painting the air, and with each stroke, the forest around us transformed. Trees flattened into two dimensions. The sky became a painted backdrop. Reality was being rendered into art by this faceless creator. In a final desperate attempt, I lunged forward, grabbing the paintbrush from the figure's hand. The moment my fingers closed around it, pain shot through my arm as the brush seemed to fuse with my skin. My vision blurred, the world around me smearing like wet paint being dragged across a canvas. When my sight cleared, I stood alone in the forest. The silhouette was gone, the canvases had vanished, but the paintbrush remained, now part of my hand, my fingers elongated and bristle-like at the tips. Red paint or blood continued to drip from them onto the forest floor, where it seeped into the earth like water. I tried to drop the brush to separate it from my flesh, but it was now part of me, or perhaps I was part of it. In the distance, through the trees, I spotted a hiker approaching along the trail. Without conscious thought, I found myself selecting a spot to prop a blank canvas that had materialized beside me. My brush fingers began to move, painting the scene before me with perfect detail: the trail, the trees, the approaching figure. The paint remained wet as I finished and stepped back into the shadows. I watched as the hiker entered the clearing and noticed my creation. He approached the canvas cautiously, admiring the artistry. I observed with newfound understanding as he reached out to touch the still wet paint. In the distance, something moved. I moved, ready to begin again. Story 5. I only noticed it while cleaning the gutters just above the roof line, a narrow window I had never seen from inside. The glass was cloudy, the frame sun-bleached. From the yard, I could swear I saw movement behind it. I climbed up to investigate, but when I reached the attic, there was no window, just wall. My hand traced over the rough plaster where the window should have been. Nothing, not even a hint of framing beneath, no sign that anything had ever broken the continuous surface. But I had seen it clearly from outside, narrow, rectangular, with a slight arch at the top. Now, standing in my own attic, surrounded by cardboard boxes and forgotten furniture draped in sheets, I felt the first prickling of unease crawl up my spine. I went back outside, positioning myself exactly where I had stood before. There it was again, undeniably, there a window that had no right to exist. The late afternoon light caught on its dusty surface, and again something moved behind the clouded glass. A shadow shifting left to right, then stopping, waiting. That night I dreamt of knocking, not the gentle tap of knuckles against wood, but a persistent, hollow thudding that seemed to resonate throughout the entire house. In my dream, I followed the sound up the stairs to the attic door, which creaked open at my touch. Beyond it was not the cluttered space I knew, but a long, narrow hallway that stretched impossibly far, ending at that window now crystal clear, revealing a face pressed against it from the other side. I woke drenched in sweat, the sheets twisted around my legs. The house stood silent around me, but my ears strained in the darkness, searching for echoes of that knocking. Nothing, just the settling of an old house, the occasional creak of wood contracting in the cool night air. The next morning, I convinced myself I had imagined it all, a trick of light, an optical illusion caused by the roof's angle and the weathered siding. I immersed myself in mundane tasks, washing dishes, answering emails, mowing the lawn, normal things that anchored me to reality. Until I noticed the smell, faint at first, barely there, like damp soil after rain, but tinged with something else, something older. I followed it through the house, up the stairs to the attic door. My hand hesitated on the knob. The smell was stronger here, earthy and ancient. I pushed the door open. The attic looked exactly as it always had. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light streaming through the single dormer window I knew should be there. Boxes stacked against the walls, old furniture, holiday decorations. But the smell was undeniable now, and with it came a subtle sound, a whisper so soft I might have mistaken it for the rustling of leaves outside, except that the air was perfectly still. I moved toward the wall where the phantom window should have been. The plaster felt different under my fingers, now not cooler exactly, but somehow less substantial. I pressed harder, and for a brief, disorienting moment, my fingers seemed to sink slightly into the surface before meeting resistance. My heart pounded as I ran downstairs for a hammer. When I returned, I stood before the wall, weapon raised, doubt flooding my mind. What was I doing? Breaking apart my own house because of what might have been a momentary hallucination. But the smell remained, and now the whispers seemed clearer, not quite words, but almost. The first strike of the hammer sent a spiderweb of cracks across the plaster. The second revealed dark wood beneath. By the fifth blow, I had exposed part of a window frame embedded in the wall, sealed behind layers of drywall and plaster. My hands trembled as I cleared away more debris. Behind the broken plaster was glass cloudy, ancient glass exactly like what I had seen from outside, and behind the glass darkness. Not the darkness of a sealed compartment, but a living darkness that seemed to pulse and breathe. I should have stopped. I should have called someone, a contractor, a priest, anyone. Instead, I kept going, driven by a compulsion I couldn't name. As the last pieces of plaster fell away, the window stood revealed a perfect match to what I had seen from outside. Its frame was carved with symbols I didn't recognize, curves and angles that hurt my eyes if I looked at them too long. The whispers grew louder, organizing themselves into something almost like language. The smell intensified earth and age and something metallic, like old pennies. Behind the glass, shadows shifted and coalesced. I reached for the latch. It turned easily under my fingers, as if recently oiled. As the window swung open on silent hinges, cold air washed over me, not the trapped air of a sealed space, but a wind that carried unfamiliar scents and the distant sound of voices. Beyond the window was not the roof of my house, not the backyard I knew should be visible from this height, but a vast landscape under an unfamiliar sky. Rolling hills stretched toward a horizon marked by strange spires. The ground was covered not with grass, but with something that resembled coral, swaying gently, though there was no wind I could feel. A figure stood in the distance, facing away from me. Human in shape, but wrong somehow, the proportions slightly off, the movements too fluid as it slowly turned toward the window, toward me. I slammed the window shut, fumbling with the latch. My fingers slipped, and for a terrifying moment I thought the window would fly open again. But the latch caught, and I backed away, breathing hard. That night I dragged my mattress into the living room. I told myself it was because of the heat, that the downstairs was cooler, but I knew the truth. I couldn't bear to sleep under that impossible window, with only a floor and a thin ceiling between us. Sleep came fitfully. Each time I drifted off, I jerked awake, certain I had heard knocking or footsteps on the stairs. Near dawn, exhaustion finally pulled me under into deeper sleep. I dreamt I was standing in my yard looking up at the house. The window was larger now, and a face looked down at me, my face, but not quite right, as if reflected in warped glass. My doppelganger raised a hand in greeting, and I found myself mirroring the gesture. As our hands lifted in unison, I noticed dark soil beneath my double's fingernails, soil that matched the smell in the attic. When I woke, dirt crumbled from my raised hand onto the white sheets. I avoided the attic after that. I told myself I would deal with it later, call someone perhaps, or seal up the window properly. But deep down, I knew that wasn't an option. The window was there now, undeniably real, and something had connected with me through it. Days passed in a fog of unease. I found myself standing at the bottom of the attic stairs without remembering how I got there. Notes appeared in my handwriting that I had no memory of, writing lists of strange words, drawings of those same unsettling symbols from the window frame. The smell permeated the house now, and sometimes from the corner of my eye, I caught glimpses of movement in empty rooms, a shadow passing doorways, the flutter of something like fabric. My reflection changed, too. Subtle differences, at first a slight asymmetry to my features, eyes that seemed darker than before. Then more noticeable changes, hair that fell differently, expressions that didn't quite match my mood. I stopped looking in mirrors. Friends called, concerned about my silence. I made excuses, busy with work, fighting a cold, anything to keep them away. I couldn't risk them seeing what was happening to my house, to me. One morning I woke to find muddy footprints leading from the front door to the attic stairs. They were my size, but I had no memory of going outside, no memory of climbing those stairs. The mud was unlike any soil nearby, darker, with strange red flecks that caught the light. I followed the footprints up the stairs, heart pounding. The attic door stood open. Inside, the window was wide open, cold air pouring through it. On the floor beneath it lay a small object, a smooth stone, covered in carvings that matched those on the window frame. When I picked it up, images flashed through my mind, that alien landscape, those coral-like plants, the spires on the horizon now clearly recognizable as massive structures, buildings of impossible architecture, and creatures moving among them, their forms shifting and changing as they moved, as if reality itself bent around them. The stone was warm in my palm, warmer than it should have been. It pulsed slightly, like a tiny heart. I knew I should throw it away, bury it, destroy it somehow. Instead, I slipped it into my pocket. From that day, the boundary between worlds grew thinner. I began to see double my familiar surroundings, overlaid with glimpses of that other place. The coral plants growing through my floorboards, the strange spires visible through my kitchen window, superimposed over the neighbor's house. And my reflection less and less my own. When I spoke, my voice carried echoes of words I never intended to say. My hands moved of their own accord, reaching for things I hadn't meant to touch. At night, I dreamt of walking through that other world, the stone clutched in my hand like a compass. Something waited for me there, at the largest spire, something that had been waiting a very long time. I began to understand that the window had always been there, hidden behind plaster and denial. My house had never truly been mine alone. We had been sharing it, the window a boundary neither of us was meant to cross. Until I did. Now I sit at my desk, writing these words with hands that sometimes hesitate, sometimes move with purpose not entirely my own. The stone sits beside me, its warmth spreading up my arm, its carvings glowing faintly in the dim light. The attic window remains open. I no longer try to close it. What would be the point? The boundary is broken, the worlds bleeding into each other. Sometimes I stand in the attic, looking out at those impossible spires, and I feel an urge to climb through, to complete whatever exchange was begun when I first noticed that window which wasn't part of my house. Someone moves through my home, now someone wearing my face, speaking with my voice, living my life. They do it well enough that no one notices the difference, no one except me. And I wonder, as I feel myself fading, becoming more at home in glimpses of that other world than in this one, was I the first? How many others lived in this house before me, noticed that window, and made the mistake of opening it? If you're reading this and you've just moved into this house, look up at the roof line. If you see a narrow window with an arched top, cloudy glass, sun-bleached frame, walk away. Sell the house, burn it down, whatever it takes. Just don't look too long at what moves behind the glass. Don't wonder where the window leads. Because it's watching you too, and it's so very patient. Story 6. It was small, one of those covered metal grates buried into the soil near the garden. I walked past it every day. But today, as I bent to pick up a fallen glove, I felt a pull like a slow inhale from beneath the ground. The smell hit me then, soil, rust, and something sweet, almost like meat left out too long. When I leaned closer, I heard a whisper, "Thank you." I jerked back, my heart pounding against my ribs. The rational part of my brain insisted it was just the wind rushing through underground pipes, but another part, a more primal part, knew better. I stood motionless, watching the drain. Nothing happened. No movement, no sound. That night I dreamed of roots growing beneath my bed, wrapping around my ankles while I slept. I woke sweating, certain something had touched me. The house was silent except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. I got up and checked under the bed. Nothing but sleep evaded me afterward. During breakfast, I found myself drawn to the window overlooking the backyard. The drain sat innocuously among overgrown grass. I decided to investigate it properly. Armed with a flashlight and garden trowel, I approached the metal grate. The surrounding soil appeared disturbed, as if something had pushed up from underneath. I knelt down, noticing how the grass nearest the drain had darkened to an unnatural shade of green. When I touched the metal cover, it was warm despite the cool morning. I pried it open with the trowel. The hole beneath was deeper than expected, disappearing into darkness my flashlight couldn't penetrate. That sweet putrid smell wafted up stronger now, making my eyes water. I leaned forward, shining the light down, and the beam revealed something that made my stomach twist. The walls of the drain weren't concrete or metal, but seemed to pulse with a damp, organic texture. I slammed the cover shut and backed away. My hands trembled as I washed them in the kitchen sink, scrubbing until my skin turned raw. That evening, while preparing dinner, I noticed a new stain on the kitchen floor, dark and damp, seeping up through the tiles. I mopped it, but within minutes it reappeared. When I pressed a paper towel against it, it came away not wet but sticky, with thin strands stretching between the floor and paper like half-dried glue. I took photographs with my phone. The images showed nothing unusual, just regular flooring, but I knew what I'd seen. I began documenting everything: the drain, the stain, the unusually verdant grass. I recorded the sounds near the drain, capturing what sounded like rhythmic breathing among the static. The whisper came again as I recorded, so close now. Sleep became fragmented, interrupted by sounds from inside the walls, a gentle scraping, like something soft being dragged across plaster. I began to notice changes in my home, doorways that seemed narrower, ceilings that appeared lower when viewed from certain angles. The mirror in the bathroom reflected my face with subtle distortions, my features asymmetrical in ways they hadn't been before. I called a plumber to inspect the drain. He arrived, checked it, and shrugged. Standard runoff drain, bone dry inside, probably hasn't been used in years. He looked at me strangely when I insisted about the organic matter. Before leaving, he suggested I call someone else, not another plumber. That night I woke to a tremendous thirst. In the kitchen, I filled a glass with water from the tap. It came out clear but tasted wrong, metallic with an aftertaste of something cloying. I spat it out and noticed black specks floating in the liquid. Under the harsh kitchen light, they seemed to move independently, swimming rather than floating. I decided to seal the drain. I purchased concrete, mixed it in a wheelbarrow, and poured it over the grate, watching as it filled every crevice. As the last of it settled, I felt a vibration through the ground beneath my feet. The concrete began to bubble, tiny pockets of air pushing up as if something below was exhaling through it. Before it could fully set, cracks formed across its surface. I stepped back, watching in horror as the cracks widened into fissures. The The concrete shifted, not breaking apart but folding inward as if being swallowed. By morning it had vanished completely, leaving the drain exposed once more. In desperation, I began digging around it, intending to remove it entirely. The soil came away easily, too easily, like it was eager to part. 6 inches down, I found something embedded in the dirt, a small bone, yellowed with age. Animal, I told myself, just an animal bone. But as I continued to dig, I uncovered more, a fragment of fabric, a tarnished button, a tooth. My digging created a sizable pit around the drain. Standing in the hole, the grate now at chest level, I noticed how the walls of my excavation seemed to lean inward, as if drawn toward the drain. The soil felt damp and warm against my hands, almost feverish. I reached for the drain cover once more, determined to see what lay beneath. As my fingers touched the metal, it vibrated with what felt like a pulse. I pried it open, and the smell that emerged was overwhelming, no longer just sweet decay, but something complex and alien. The darkness below shifted. Something moved within it, something that reflected my flashlight beam with moist, curved surfaces. I heard a sound like wet fabric unfurling. From the depths came a voice, my voice speaking words I didn't understand but somehow recognized. "We've waited so long for you to find us." I scrambled backward, losing my footing on the slick soil. As I fell, the ground beneath me softened, embracing rather than bruising. The earth around the drain began to sink, creating a funnel with the grate at its center. The metal cover slid away, revealing an opening that widened like a dilating pupil. From my house came the sound of breaking glass. I looked up to see the windows bulging outward, frames splintering as something pressed against them from inside. The walls themselves seemed to breathe now, expanding and contracting in slow, deliberate movements. My phone rang in my pocket. When I answered, I heard only a gurgling sound and my name, repeated in that voice that was both mine and not mine. I ran inside, grabbing Essential's wallet, keys, a change of clothes. The floorboards rippled beneath my feet like the surface of water disturbed by a stone. The stain in the kitchen had spread, connecting to others throughout the house in patterns that resembled branching veins. In the bathroom, I splashed water on my face and looked up to find my reflection smiling back at me while I remained frozen in horror. My image reached forward, pressing its palms against the glass from the inside. Backing away, I fled to my car. The engine sputtered but wouldn't catch. Through the windshield, I watched as the ground around the drain collapsed entirely, forming a perfect sinkhole. The garden, part of the patio, even the corner of the house began sliding toward it with glacial inevitability. I abandoned the car and ran down the street, not looking back until I'd put considerable distance between myself and the house. When I finally turned, I saw my home standing intact, no evidence of the collapse I'd witnessed. Only the drain remained visible, the metal cover glinting in the fading light. I haven't returned. I moved from motel to motel now, but I know it isn't over. Each night, I find a new stain on the floor beside my bed. Each morning, my reflection hesitates just a fraction of a second before mirroring my movements. The drains in every shower gurgle my name. And sometimes, when I'm drifting off to sleep, I feel the mattress shift beneath me as if something below is turning over. That's when I hear the whisper again, "We're still waiting. We're growing toward you through every pipe, every drain, every dark, forgotten place. Distance doesn't matter when you've already let us in." I've tried telling others, but the words twist in my mouth. Instead, I write this down as a warning. Check the drains near your home. If you feel even the slightest pull of air moving inward when it should be still, seal it immediately. And if you hear a whisper thanking you, run, just run. Because what lives beneath the soil has learned your name now, and the barriers between your world and its have grown paper thin. And whatever you do, don't listen too closely to the sounds your house makes at night. They might start making sense. Story 7, we'd never used the monitor before the baby still slept in our room, but tonight the screen flickered on by itself, showing the empty nursery. The audio crackled and a voice came through, calm, familiar. It whispered a nickname I hadn't heard in 20 years, one only my grandmother used, and she's been gone a long time. I froze in the hallway, staring at the small device in my hand. The screen showed the nursery, bathed in the soft glow of the night light exactly as I'd left it earlier. Empty crib, rocking chair, stuffed animals arranged on the shelf, nothing unusual. Except for that voice. I pressed the monitor closer to my ear, waiting. Silence, had I imagined it. The stress of new parenthood played tricks on the mind, or so everyone said. Sleep deprivation could cause hallucinations. Yet the nickname felt too specific, Little Sparrow, something so personal, so distant from my adult life that even my husband didn't know it. My finger hovered over the power button, ready to shut it off, when it came again. Little Sparrow, I've been waiting for you. The voice had a strange quality, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, but with an unmistakable warmth that sent shivers racing down my spine. The kind of warmth that could only belong to someone who loved you, the kind of warmth my grandmother had. I should have turned it off, should have walked away. Instead, I whispered back, "Who's there?" The screen flickered, static dancing across it for a moment before settling again on the empty room. But something had changed. The rocking chair moved slightly, as if someone had just stood up. "Come see me," the voice said. My feet carried me toward the nursery before I could question why. The rational part of my brain screamed warnings, but curiosity pulled me forward like an invisible thread. The wooden floor creaked beneath my steps, each sound amplified in a quiet house. My husband slept soundly in our bedroom, unaware. The baby breathed peacefully in the bassinet beside our bed. They existed in a different world from the one I was entering, a world where baby monitors didn't turn themselves on, where dead relatives didn't speak through electronic devices. I paused at the nursery door, hand on the knob. The monitor screen in my other hand still showed the room just as it should be, but something felt wrong about the image. It seemed delayed, like I was watching a recording from moments ago rather than a live feed. I pushed the door open. The nursery looked normal at first glance, everything in its place. The air felt different though, heavier somehow, with a faint scent I recognized but couldn't place. Something from childhood, something that reminded me of summer visits to my grandmother's house. Freshly baked bread. My grandmother had baked bread every Sunday morning without fail. The scent would fill her small house, waking me from sleep. "Rise and shine, little sparrow," she'd say, stroking my hair. The rocking chair moved again, a gentle back and forth motion, though no one sat in it. "I've been watching over you," the voice said, no longer coming from the monitor but seeming to emanate from the chair itself. "I've always been watching." "Grandma," my voice sounded childlike even to my own ears. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly. I could see my breath forming small clouds in the air. The monitor in my hand went black, then displayed a series of rapidly changing images, photos I recognized from my childhood. My 5th birthday, my first bicycle, my high school graduation, images flashing by faster than should have been possible. The last image lingered my grandmother on her deathbed, eyes closed. Except in the monitor, her eyes opened and stared directly at me. I dropped the device. It clattered to the floor but didn't break. Instead, it projected a dim light that stretched across the room, forming a vague human shape near the crib. "You named her after me," the voice said, not a question. "My daughter Elena, named for my grandmother." "Yes," I whispered. "She's beautiful. She has my eyes." My skin prickled. The baby did have the same unusual gray-green eyes as my grandmother. "What do you want?" I asked, backing toward the door. The temperature continued to drop. Frost formed on the window, delicate patterns spreading across the glass. The rocking chair moved more vigorously now. "To warn you." My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. Warn me about what? "She's coming back wrong." 4 words that made no sense, yet filled me with dread so profound I could barely stand. The light from the monitor pulsed, the human shape becoming more defined with each flash. I could make out arms, legs, a head not quite my grandmother, but something wearing her shape like an ill-fitting coat. "I don't understand," I said, though part of me did. The figure drifted toward the crib, peering down at nothing, the empty vessel waiting to be filled. I thought of my daughter sleeping peacefully in our room, safe, protected, but for how long? "What does that mean?" I demanded, finding courage in maternal instinct. The figure turned toward me, and for a moment I saw my grandmother's face not as she had been in death, elderly and withered, but as she had been in my earliest memories. Young, vibrant, beautiful, but wrong somehow, like looking at a reflection in troubled water. "Some doors should remain closed, little sparrow. I tried to keep it shut. For generations we've kept it shut, but she's found a way back." "Who has?" I asked, though I feared the answer. "The woman in the shadows, the one who takes little girls, the one who wore my skin before I was born, the one who wants your Elena now." The monitor began to emit a high-pitched whine. The figure by the crib reached out toward me, its arm elongating unnaturally across the room. I felt cold fingers brush my cheek. "She's already inside the house," my grandmother's voice whispered, suddenly sounding afraid. "She's been here since the night Elena was conceived." The nursery door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. The monitor screen flashed again, showing not the nursery but our bedroom. My husband still slept, but the bassinet beside the bed was empty. I screamed and lunged for the door, yanking at the handle that wouldn't turn. Through the monitor, I watched as a shadow detached itself from the corner of our bedroom and moved toward my husband. It paused, as if sensing it was being watched, and turned. The face that looked back wasn't human. It smiled with too many teeth, eyes reflecting red in the monitor's infrared light. It held something in its arms, something small that squirmed and made no sound. The monitor went dead. The temperature in the nursery returned to normal. The door clicked and swung open. I ran to our bedroom, desperate to disprove what I'd seen. My husband stirred as I burst in, mumbling something about bad dreams. The bassinet stood beside the bed just as it had been. I rushed to it, heart hammering. Elena lay there, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with each breath. Relief flooded through me as I reached down to touch her cheek. Her eyes opened gray-green, like my grandmother's, like mine. But as I looked closer, I noticed a ring of red around the pupil that had never been there before. "Bad dream?" my husband asked sleepily from the bed. I couldn't answer. Alina stared up at me, unblinking. Her tiny hand reached up and grasped my finger with surprising strength. "Little sparrow," she cooed in a voice that didn't belong to an infant, a voice I recognized from the monitor. My husband sat up. Did she just speak? That's not possible. Alina smiled. A newborn shouldn't be able to smile that way, and I saw them. Tiny teeth already formed behind her gums. "She's hungry," said the voice from my daughter's mouth. "She's always hungry." The baby monitor left behind in the nursery crackled to life once more. I could hear it from the hallway. My grandmother's voice, faint and fading. "I'm sorry, little sparrow." I couldn't stop her. No one can. She wears us all eventually. Alina's grip tightened around my finger until I felt a sharp pain. A drop of blood welled up where her nails, suddenly longer, sharper, had pierced my skin. She brought my bleeding finger to her mouth and sucked, her eyes never leaving mine, pupils expanding until the gray-green was consumed by darkness. And I knew with terrible certainty that whatever looked out from those eyes wasn't my daughter. Wasn't Alina. Wasn't even human. My husband reached for her, oblivious to the transformation happening before my eyes. "Don't," I whispered. "What's wrong?" he asked, already lifting her from the bassinet. I watched as Alina nuzzled against his neck, her eyes still fixed on me over his shoulder. Her lips moved, forming words no infant should know. "Your turn next, little sparrow." The baby monitor in the nursery went silent, but in my mind I could still hear my grandmother's warning playing on an endless loop. Some doors should remain closed. We've kept it shut for generations. She's found a way back. Now I stand guard every night, watching Alina, watching my husband, waiting for whatever lives behind my daughter's eyes to make its next move. I've hidden the baby monitor, but sometimes I still hear it crackling from wherever I concealed it, my grandmother's voice growing weaker each night. "Fight her, little sparrow. You're stronger than I was." But am I? The thing wearing my daughter's skin grows stronger every day. She's speaking full sentences now. The doctors call her exceptional, gifted. They don't see what happens when no one else is watching. They don't see how shadows gather around her crib. They don't see how pets go missing in our neighborhood. They don't know about the small bones I've found hidden around the house. My husband thinks I'm suffering from postpartum psychosis. Maybe he's right. Maybe this is all in my mind. But deep down, I know the truth. My grandmother tried to warn me, and now she's gone, truly gone this time. And I'm alone with the thing that knows my childhood name. Story 8, it had always leaned toward the light like any normal plant. But over the past week, the vines had started creeping in a different direction, curling out of the pot across the floor toward my door. The leaves pulsed slightly as if breathing. The soil smelled sour, overwatered, and this morning I found a single leaf under my pillow. I picked up the leaf, turning it between my fingers. The texture felt wrong, waxy, and almost warm to the touch, with tiny hair-like structures that seemed to grip my skin. When I tried to throw it away, it stuck to my fingertips for a moment longer than it should have. The plant itself was a gift from my neighbor, an elderly woman with kind eyes and trembling hands. "It will purify your air," she had said, passing the ceramic pot into my arms. "Just be careful not to talk to it too much." She had laughed then, a wheezing sound that caught in her throat. I had assumed it was a joke. Back in my living room, I knelt beside the plant. Its leaves were broader now, darker, with veins that seemed to pulse with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The stems had grown thicker, woody, no longer the delicate green vines I remembered, and despite having watered it just yesterday, the soil was bone dry. I leaned close to examine it, my breath disturbing the leaves. They shivered in response, not like a plant in a breeze, but like an animal sensing danger. A faint, sweet smell rose from them like overripe fruit on the edge of decay. My finger traced the vine that had escaped the pot. It had traversed 10 feet of hardwood floor, growing along the baseboards before making a sharp turn toward my bedroom. The tip of the vine was curled as if in anticipation. I snipped it with scissors, feeling an unexpected resistance, as if cutting through cartilage rather than plant matter. A clear liquid oozed from the cut, thicker than sap, with a metallic scent that made my nose wrinkle. That night, sleep eluded me. My room felt too warm, the air too thick. The darkness seemed to pulse at the edges of my vision. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were filled with green, writhing things with too many leaves, too many roots, growing toward me with patient hunger. Morning came, and with it, a discovery that sent ice through my veins. A new vine had grown thicker, faster, reaching not just to my door but under it, stretching across my bedroom floor to within inches of my bed. Fresh soil trailed behind it like footprints. I grabbed the vine, meaning to yank it back, to uproot it from my room. The moment my skin made contact, images flashed through my mind: dark soil, tight spaces, the slow, inexorable push toward light, toward sustenance. Hunger, ancient and patient. My hands shook as I released it. This was absurd. Plants don't move with purpose. They don't hunger, they don't think. Yet I could not shake the feeling that this one was watching me, learning my patterns, waiting for something. I called the neighbor who had given me the plant. Her phone rang endlessly before connecting to a generic voicemail. I left a message asking about the plant, its species, its care, anything she could tell me. My voice sounded high and thin even to my own ears. While waiting for her response, I researched online. I found nothing resembling my plant, nothing with quite the same leaf pattern, the same woody vines, the same pulsing quality to its foliage. The closest matches were rare tropical species, none of which should have been able to survive in my apartment. That evening, I resolved to get rid of it. I put on gardening gloves, grabbed a trash bag, and approached the plant. As I reached for the main stem, the leaves rustled with no breeze to move them. The soil shifted, and from deep within the pot came a sound like knuckles cracking. I stumbled back, heart hammering. Plants don't make sounds. They don't move without wind. They don't. The neighbor's call interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Her voice was weak, distant. "You still have that plant?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "It's acting strange, growing toward my bedroom." I was about to throw it out. Silence stretched between us. Then, "Don't touch it, I'm coming over." She arrived looking gaunt, her skin sallow in the harsh hallway light. Her eyes darted to the plant immediately, widening at the sight of the vines stretching across my floor. "You've been feeding it," she said, "not a question." "Just water and sunlight," I responded. She shook her head slowly. "It doesn't want those things, not primarily." She knelt with difficulty beside the plant, her arthritic fingers hovering over but not touching the leaves. "My husband brought it back from an expedition, his last one. We didn't know what it was then, still don't, really." "What does it want?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Dreams," she whispered. "It feeds on dreams, grows toward the strongest dreamer in a home, puts its leaves near your head, catches your dreams like dew." I thought of the leaf under my pillow and felt ill. At first, it's harmless, takes only what you don't need, the forgettable dreams, the ones that fade upon waking anyway. Her fingers trembled as she traced the path of the vine toward my bedroom. But it gets greedy, takes more, takes the dreams you need, the ones that process fear, trauma, desire, takes them until your sleep is empty, until your mind starts to crack from the strain. That's impossible, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. She looked up at me, her eyes suddenly sharp. My husband stopped dreaming entirely, started sleepwalking, would wake up with dirt under his nails, soil in his bed, then he stopped waking up at all. She swallowed hard. The medical examiner said heart failure, natural causes, but I found him with a leaf under his tongue. My mouth went dry. Why would you give this to me? It was dying in my home, no dreams left to take. She looked away. I thought it was just a plant by then, that whatever had made it special had faded. I was wrong, it was just dormant, waiting. How do we kill it? I asked. We can't, she said simply, but we can starve it, deprive it of dreams. That night I didn't sleep, neither did my neighbor who insisted on staying. We sat in my living room watching the plant. The leaves seemed agitated, turning and rustling despite the still air. The vines moved perceptibly, growing an inch, then two, as we watched. My neighbor nodded off briefly near dawn. In those few minutes, a vine shot across the floor with unnatural speed, reaching for her. I shook her awake just as it brushed her ankle. She kicked it away, her face pale. It knows what we're doing, she whispered. The next day brought new growth vines thicker than my thumb, reaching not just for my bedroom now, but for every room in the apartment. The plant itself had changed, the main stem swollen and knotted, the leaves darker, with edges that looked almost serrated. The sweet smell had intensified, becoming cloying, narcotic. My neighbor and I took shifts, sleeping brief naps, 20 minutes at most, not long enough to dream. We kept moving, never staying in one place long enough for the vines to reach us. Our exhaustion grew, making the boundaries between waking and sleeping dangerously thin. On the third day, my neighbor collapsed. I can't, she murmured, her eyes already closing. Too old for this, just need an hour. I tried to wake her, but she was beyond rousing, her breathing already deepening into sleep. I dragged her to the bathroom, the only room still relatively free of vines, and locked us both inside. Through the door, I could hear the rustling of the plant, growing louder, more frantic. She began to dream almost immediately, her eyes moving rapidly beneath their lids. I watched in horror as green tendrils pushed through the space beneath the door, through the keyhole, through the vent, converging on her with single-minded purpose. I tried to pull them away, but they clung to her, wrapping around her arms, her legs, reaching for her head. Where they touched her skin, they seemed to meld with it, the boundaries between plant and human blurring. Her eyes snapped open, but they were wrong, too green, the pupils elongated like leaves. So bright, she said, but her voice had a rustling quality to it, so full of dreams. I backed away until I hit the bathtub. She stood, moving stiffly, the vines still attached to her like puppet strings, or perhaps they were part of her now. It's not taking, she said, her head tilting at an unnatural angle. It's giving back, every dream it ever took, every dream from every sleeper. They're all inside me now. A smile spread across her face, too wide, revealing teeth stained with chlorophyll. Would you like to see them? She reached for me with hands that were more vine than flesh, fingers elongated into twisting green tendrils. I ducked past her and ran, slamming the bathroom door behind me. The apartment was a jungle now, vines covering every surface, leaves brushing against my face as I pushed through them. The original plant was unrecognizable, a massive, pulsating growth that had burst its pot, spreading roots throughout my living room. I made it to the front door, fumbling with the locks. As I pulled it open, something caught my ankle, a vine, stronger than the others, pulling me back. I fell, clawing at the door frame. My neighbor stood at the end of the hallway, barely human now, a grotesque hybrid of woman and plant. "Stay," she said, her voice a whisper of rustling leaves. "Dream with us." I kicked free and stumbled into the hallway, slamming the door behind me. Through it, I could hear something scratching, growing, pushing at the edges. I fled, left everything behind, found a new place to live, far away. But even now, months later, I don't dare to sleep for long, don't dare to dream too deeply. Because sometimes I find soil in my bed. Sometimes my skin itches with what feels like roots taking hold, and this morning beneath my pillow. A single leaf, waxy and warm, pulsing slightly as if breathing. Story 9, we don't wear shoes inside. The carpet always stays pristine. But last night I saw footprints, deep, heel-first impressions that started in the middle of the hallway and led back toward the wall. There's no door there, no gap, just wallpaper. The air in the hall smelled faintly of cold clay. I pressed my hand to the wall. It gave just slightly like skin. I pulled back immediately, my fingers tingling with a strange numbness. The footprints fascinated me in their impossibility, appearing from nowhere and vanishing into solid matter. I crouched down, running my fingers over the indentations. The carpet fibers felt damp despite looking dry, and the impressions were deep, as if made by someone substantial, someone heavy. That night I slept fitfully, waking to the sound of soft thuds coming from the hallway. Not footsteps exactly, more like something being dragged across carpet. When I finally gathered the courage to check, the hallway stood empty, but the footprints had multiplied. Now they crisscrossed the space, some leading to the wall, others emerging from it. And strangest of all, some appeared to walk in place, as if whoever or whatever made them had stood in one spot, shifting weight from foot to foot. I took photos. I needed proof, needed to convince myself I wasn't imagining things. The images captured the indentations clearly, but when I zoomed in on the deepest impressions, the pixels blurred and distorted, creating patterns that resembled faces, open mouths, wide eyes. I deleted the photos immediately, but the memory of those accidental faces lingered. The next morning, the footprints had vanished. The carpet looked pristine, as if freshly vacuumed. I almost convinced myself I'd dreamed the whole thing until I noticed the wallpaper. The pattern had shifted slightly, the floral design now containing what looked like fingerprints pressed from the other side, stretching the paper outward in tiny bulges. I avoided the hallway for days, taking the long way around through the kitchen to reach my bedroom. I told no one who would believe me. Instead, I started keeping a journal, documenting every strange occurrence. The way the temperature dropped whenever I approached that section of wall. The faint whispering sound that emerged whenever the heating system turned on. The strange marks that appeared on my skin after I slept, not bruises exactly, but perfect circular impressions, like fingerprints pressed too hard against my flesh. One evening, while writing in my journal, my pen ran dry. I shook it, scribbled in the margin to get the ink flowing, but nothing helped. Then, without warning, ink flooded the page, not from my pen, but seeping up through the paper itself, forming words in handwriting that wasn't mine. Help me find my way back. I dropped the journal, watching in horror as the ink continued to spread, forming more words. I took a wrong turn. The rational part of my mind searched for explanations, a prank, a hidden leak of some dark fluid beneath my desk, a hallucination brought on by stress or lack of sleep. But deep down I knew Something existed on the other side of that wall, something trying to communicate. That night I sat in the hallway, back pressed against the opposite wall, watching. The house creaked and settled around me. Wind rattled the windows. My eyelids grew heavy, but I forced myself to stay awake, focused on the blank wall opposite me. Near dawn, when the darkness was at its deepest, I saw a slight bulge in the wallpaper, moving horizontally as if someone ran their hand along the other side. Then another bulge lower down, a shoulder perhaps. The pattern of the wallpaper stretched and distorted as something pressed against it from behind. I should have run. Any rational person would have fled, called for help, never returned. Instead, I approached, drawn by a curiosity that overpowered my fear. The wallpaper continued to shift and bulge. I reached out, placing my palm against the largest protrusion. The wall felt warm, pulsing, alive. Something pressed back against my hand. I jerked away, heart pounding, but remained rooted to the spot. The bulge followed my movement, tracking my presence. I spoke then, voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" The wallpaper rippled in response, and the air filled with a scent like wet earth after rain. The bulge grew more pronounced, taking the shape of what could only be a face, a nose, cheekbones, the hollow of eye sockets. The pattern of the wallpaper stretched across these features, giving the impression of a face wearing a floral mask. I backed away, finally finding the will to move, but as I retreated, the face in the wall became more defined. The pattern split where a mouth should be, revealing not the expected drywall or wooden studs, but darkness, a void that seemed to extend far beyond the physical limitations of my home. From this opening came a whisper, so faint I might have imagined it. "The walls between are thinner than you think." I ran then, locking myself in my bedroom until morning light seeped through the blinds. When I finally emerged, the hallway appeared normal. The wallpaper showed no signs of disturbance. But now I noticed other things, how the floor plan of my home didn't quite make sense, how certain walls seemed thicker than they should be, how sounds echoed strangely in particular corners. I began measuring, documenting the dimensions of each room, calculating the space. My findings confirmed my suspicion. There was a discrepancy of nearly 3 feet between the inner and outer measurements of my home. Space unaccounted for, space where something else could exist. I considered tearing down the wall, but feared what might emerge. Instead, I began researching the history of the house, discovering that the original floor plan had included a narrow passage, a servant's corridor that had been sealed during renovations. The hallway where the footprints appeared aligned perfectly with where this passage would have been. The footprints returned that night, more numerous than before. They no longer just led to and from the wall, now they circled my bedroom door while I slept, surrounded the couch where I sat reading, gathered near the shower while I bathed. Always heel first, always deeply pressed into the carpet as if made by someone substantial. I began leaving notes pressed against the wall, questions written on paper, then placed against the wallpaper before I slept. In the morning, the papers remained, but now bore responses written in that same unfamiliar hand. "I lived here before the walls changed. I can see you, but can't reach you. The house remembers me even if you don't." I started sleeping in the hallway, waiting, watching. Sometimes I woke to find myself in different positions, as if I'd moved in my sleep. Sometimes I found new marks on my skin, perfect circles arranged in patterns like constellations. Sometimes I heard my own voice having conversations I couldn't remember. The boundaries continued to thin. Objects disappeared only to reappear days later in impossible locations, inside locked drawers, balanced atop ceiling fans embedded halfway into walls. Mirrors reflected rooms I'd never entered. The temperature fluctuated wildly in certain spots, creating pockets of winter amid summer heat. I stopped leaving the house entirely. Outside seemed far away, unreal compared to the mysteries within these walls. I lost track of days, marking time only by the appearance and disappearance of the footprints. My journal filled with observations, theories, one-sided conversations with whatever dwelled on the other side. Then came the night when everything changed. I awoke to find new footprints, but these led away from the wall into the center of my home, and they were wet, leaving dark stains on the carpet. Following them, I found myself back at the wall, but something had changed. The wallpaper now featured a door-shaped outline, seams visible where none had existed before. I placed my hand against this outline. The wall felt thin, almost membranous. With minimal pressure, my fingers broke through, meeting not resistance but a sensation like pushing through cobwebs or dense fog. I pulled back, finding my fingertips covered in a substance that looked like ash but felt damp, almost gelatinous. I knew then I had a choice to make. Continue pushing through, discover what waited on the other side, or seal the wall, pretend I'd seen nothing, perhaps move away and leave this mystery for some future resident to uncover. The rational choice was clear, but rationality had long since abandoned this house. I pressed harder, watching my hand disappear up to the wrist. The sensation was strange, neither warm nor cold, neither painful nor pleasant, just different. Beyond my hand, I sensed space, movement, a presence waiting. I pushed further, arm vanishing up to the elbow. Something gripped my hand on the other side, fingers interlacing with mine, palm pressing against palm. The grip tightened, pulled. I resisted at first, then surrendered, allowing myself to be drawn forward. The wall stretched around me like a membrane, enveloping my face, my chest, my legs. For one terrifying moment, I existed in both places at once, half in my familiar hallway, half somewhere else. Then I was through, standing in a space that mirrored my own home, yet differed in subtle, unsettling ways. The colors were muted, the angles slightly off, and I wasn't alone. The figure before me wore my face, my clothes, my expression of shock. I smiled, raising a hand in greeting. My mouth moved, but the voice that emerged wasn't mine. "Thank you for the trade." Before I could respond, I felt a powerful shove against my chest. I stumbled backward, passing through the membrane-like barrier once more, emerging into what I thought was my hallway. But something had changed. The carpet beneath my feet felt different. The walls stood at slightly wrong angles. In the window at the end of the hall, my reflection showed a face almost but not quite my own. And on the carpet, new footprints appeared, leading from where I stood back to the wall. Heel-first impressions, deep and deliberate. I realized then the truth of my situation. I hadn't returned to my home. I'd simply crossed to yet another version, another layer. And somewhere, wearing my face, living my life, was the entity I'd freed. Now I leave my own footprints, make my own impressions in walls. I wait for curiosity to draw someone new to investigate, someone who might help me find my way back. Or perhaps I'll find another wall, another transition, another version to explore. After all, the entity had written the truth. The walls between are thinner than you think. Story 10. The doorbell remained silent on that tranquil autumn afternoon. A delicate knock echoed through the house, barely audible, akin to the soft flutter of a moth's wings against a window pane. Wrapped in a cozy blanket, I sat on the couch, engrossed in a book, while the rain outside created a soothing symphony with its gentle pitter-patter against the window panes. The knock stirred me from my reverie, and I rose from the couch, assuming it was just the wind playing tricks. Upon opening the door, a mysterious sight greeted me. No one stood on the doorstep, only a neatly wrapped brown package sat, perfectly squared, as if placed with utmost care. There were no labels, no addresses, just my name elegantly inscribed in ancient calligraphy, as though penned with black ink from a bygone era. The package beckoned me, its smooth cardboard surface untouched by the rain outside, despite the persistent downpour. Picking it up, I was surprised by its lightness and brought it inside, where a profound silence enveloped me. The only sounds were the rhythmic ticking of the pendulum clock and the soft rain continuing its gentle descent. Seated once more on the couch, I scrutinized the package from every angle. Its flawless edges and absence of obvious opening points puzzled me. A faint fragrance wafted from within, a blend of old books, black tea, and a hint of sandalwood, evoking a sense of nostalgia and intrigue. As I held it on my lap, a subtle movement seemed to stir inside, like a delicate dance of unseen currents. The diminishing afternoon light cast elongated shadows in the room, creating an atmosphere of quiet mystery. Opting for the natural twilight, I refrained from switching on the lamps, allowing the soft darkness to embrace everything. The package seemed to absorb the fading light in a peculiar manner, as if its surface possessed a mesmerizing quality, playing with reflections. Lost in contemplation, I decided to explore a way to unveil the package's secrets. Running my fingers along its edges, I noticed certain spots were warmer, as if harboring a mysterious internal heat that followed an enigmatic pattern. Amid my attempts to unlock its mysteries, a distant memory surfaced of a similar package from my childhood days at my grandparents' home, bearing only a name inscribed in the same elegant script. The rain outside intensified slightly, its cadence aligning with the warmth patterns I detected on the package. Was it mere coincidence or a deeper connection? Lost in introspection, the room's temperature subtly shifted to a state of equilibrium, neither hot nor cold. The familiar scent emanating from the package mingled with the rain's fragrance, creating an ethereal ambience. In a moment of astonishment, I discovered a wondrous phenomenon. My touch left luminous imprints on the cardboard, as if it responded to my warmth. These ethereal marks shimmered briefly before fading away, akin to fleeting stars in the night sky. Mesmerized, I observed this enchanting display, losing track of time until evening descended upon the room. As twilight bathed the space in a bluish hue, the package emitted a faint, almost imperceptible glow, becoming the sole source of light in the dimly lit room. Opting to delay its unveiling, I placed it gently on the coffee table and illuminated the room with a lamp. In the artificial light, the package appeared ordinary, once more a simple brown cube with my name adorning it. In the ensuing days, the package retained its enigmatic allure. At times, a faint glow would tease the twilight, while a subtle internal movement persisted, as if engaged in a silent ballet. The elusive scent evolved subtly, a constant yet ever-changing companion. The mystery remained unsolved, the contents unknown. Perhaps the true magic lay not in unraveling its secrets, but in embracing the mystery. It embodied a perfect enigma, inviting contemplation rather than disclosure. Even now, as autumn rain taps against the windows, I find myself drawn back to that moment, pondering the silent presence of the mysterious package. I muse on the possibility that elsewhere, in some distant abode, another soul might be facing a similar conundrum, a package adorned with their name in that same elegant script. beckoning to be opened yet content to dance undisturbed in the realm of the unknown. Story 11. The night had draped the old house with a velvet cloak of stillness, broken only by the soft patter of autumn rain tapping against the window panes. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a cup of steaming tea, I absent-mindedly gazed at the painting hanging on the wall before me. It was an heirloom from my grandmother, portraying a woodland scene at sunset. Though not of great value, it had always drawn me in with its ability to evoke a sense of wistful calm. That night, as the golden glow from the floor lamp cast flickering shadows around the room, I noticed something peculiar. The painting appeared slightly askew to the right, though I was certain it had always hung perfectly level. Setting down my cup on the nearby table, I rose slowly, the wooden floor murmuring under my steps as I approached the wall. With gentle hands, I adjusted the painting, feeling the roughness of the antique frame beneath my fingertips. Returning to my seat, I picked up the book I had momentarily abandoned. The warmth of the tea and the soothing sound of rain outside lulled me into a contented drowsiness. Only after a few moments, as I glanced up, did I realize the painting was now tilted to the left. A faint shiver traced down my spine, yet I tried to convince myself it was merely fatigue or a trick of light and shadow. Rising again, this time more cautiously, I neared the painting and noticed something I had never before seen. The sunset hues appeared richer, almost pulsing with life, and the tree shadows seemed to stretch longer than before. Tentatively, I touched the canvas, feeling its warmth as if it had absorbed the room's heat, yet there was a peculiar quality to the way the paint shimmered in the light. In the days that followed, my attention was drawn more and more to the painting. Each time I entered the room, it seemed to have shifted slightly. Sometimes the change was subtle, other times more pronounced. Not only did its tilt vary, but the details within the painting itself seemed to subtly alter. Trees looked thicker on one day, clouds in the painted sky changed shape on another. I began photographing the painting every morning and evening, scrutinizing the images meticulously. The variances were slight but undeniable. In the painted forest, small elements appeared and disappeared. A nest among the branches, a hidden clearing, a faint path that hadn't existed before. The sunset seemed to inch along imperceptibly, as if time within the painting flowed at a different pace than our own. On a particularly tranquil evening, as I sat in my usual armchair, a movement caught my eye. The painting was shifting on its own with a barely perceptible slowness. Rather than fear, a profound curiosity mingled with a surreal tranquility enveloped me. The motion was fluid, as if an unseen hand was tenderly caressing it. I approached the painting once more, unhesitatingly this time. The canvas seemed to hum faintly under my gaze. Reflected in the glass that shielded the painting, for a fleeting instant, I thought I glimpsed a familiar figure. The blurred profile of my grandmother, ethereal like a faded memory, seemed to smile while writing the painting's position. Since that moment, I've come to embrace these subtle changes as part of the house's enchantment. Each night before retiring to bed, I devote a few moments to studying the painting, endeavoring to uncover its new secrets. Sometimes I wonder if it's my grandmother's way of reassuring me she's still present, watching over me through this enigmatic canvas that shifts and evolves like a living entity. I've kept this tale close to my heart, choosing to cherish the sweet mystery within. The painting continues its movements, though now less frequently, as if it has found a harmonious balance between revealing itself and safeguarding its enigma. And I sit in my armchair each evening, sipping tea, listening to the rain drumming against the windows, observing the painting that breathes its own existence, a silent exchange understood only by us. Story 12. Night had wrapped the old countryside house in a cloak of profound serenity. Nestled in my cherished armchair beside the crackling fireplace, I observed the shadows waltzing on the walls while the flames leisurely devoured the logs. The warmth enveloped me like a cozy embrace, as outside the autumn breeze tenderly brushed against the tree leaves. In that moment of utter tranquility, a peculiar sound caught my attention, a pure, childlike laughter resonating from the upper floor of the house. It was a laugh akin to silver bells. Pausing to listen, I allowed the sound to intertwine with the fire's crackle. There was no menace in it. On the contrary, it was a joyous laughter, almost melodic. However, having dwelled alone in this house for over 2 decades, children were never part of its inhabitants. Curiosity began to trickle through me like a tranquil stream, gradually dispelling the drowsiness that had nearly overtaken me. Deliberate movements, I rose from the armchair, relishing the sensation as my feet met the worn Persian rug. The wooden floorboards emitted soft creaks as I made my way towards the staircase. The glow from the candles flickering in the living room cast a welcoming ambience, projecting my silhouette on the walls in a silent dance. Ascending the stairs, I noticed the air growing cooler with each step. It was not a harsh chill, but rather a gentle touch on the skin, reminiscent of the breeze near the ocean. The laughter echoed once more, this time nearer, emanating from the guest room. A room seldom used, adorned with antique furniture veiled in white sheets that swayed faintly, stirred by an unseen draft. The door stood slightly ajar, allowing a silvery light to filter through, unlike any other light in the house. It was not the moon's glow, too warm for that, nor was it the illumination of electric lamps. It was something else, pulsating softly, akin to a serene heartbeat. As I pushed the door, the ancient wood sang a familiar tune. The room unfolded before me, bathed in that peculiar luminescence. The draped furniture formed gentle, comforting contours, resembling clouds in a clear sky. And there, perched on the windowsill, I beheld something that made me hold my breath, not a distinct figure, but a play of light and shadows that seemed to mimic a child. The laughter reverberated once more, clearly originating from that radiant presence. No fear gripped me, only a profound sense of awe. The light child toyed with the rays it emitted, crafting luminous designs on the walls as if painting with light itself. I approached cautiously, and with each step, the room's temperature oscillated tenderly between cool and warm, like the ebb and flow of ocean waves. Drawing near, I discerned a familiarity in the figure. In its fluid movements, I recognized echoes of the gestures I once made as a child, playing alone in my room. The realization washed over me with the sweetness of a long-forgotten memory. That laughter, so crystalline and innocent, was my own childhood laughter. Time seemed to linger as I observed that surreal spectacle. The light child continued its silent play, occasionally interrupted by that melodious laughter, now echoing like a reverberation from the past. I refrained from speaking or engaging, fearing to shatter the spell of tranquility and nostalgia. Slowly, the silvery light began to wane, akin to the setting sun on a winter evening. The child's form became increasingly ethereal until only a faint glow remained. The last laughter I heard was but a whisper, a tender farewell before dissolving entirely into darkness. I lingered in the room for what felt like an eternity, cloaked in a serene silence. The draped furniture ceased its swaying, and the air resumed its usual temperature. Yet something had shifted. The guest room, once a repository for dusty recollections, now seemed to harbor a precious secret. Returning to my armchair by the fireplace where the flames flickered steadily, I settled amidst the cushions, realizing I would never truly unravel the enigma of that night. Was it a dream, a memory, or perchance something deeper, a message from the past manifesting through a child's laughter in the shadows? Since that night, whenever I passed by the guest room, I paused to listen. Sometimes, on the stillest of nights, I catch a faint echo of that crystalline laughter, akin to a soothing lullaby guiding me towards slumber. And with a smile, I allow the mystery to linger, a sweet secret shared between myself and the child who laughs in the darkness. Story 13, snow whispered its way down that evening in my quaint antique shop. The gentle flakes pirouetted behind the windows, bathed in the cozy glow of vintage lamps, casting a tender and inviting aura. The aged wood of the shelves murmured softly, harmonizing with the unhurried beat of the pendulum clock's hands. The air carried the fragrance of ancient books and beeswax, a scent unique to objects steeped in history. As I arranged a few volumes, the doorbell chimed with crystalline clarity. A gust of wintry air crept in, carrying a handful of snowflakes that melted upon the wooden floor. I turned to greet the visitor, but found myself momentarily transfixed. Standing at the threshold was a tall figure, cloaked in darkness that seemed to swallow the surrounding light. A broad-brimmed hat obscured the upper half of their face, while a gray wool scarf veiled the lower. "Good evening," I murmured, striving to maintain a composed demeanor despite a subtle sense of unease tingling up my spine. The visitor remained silent, gliding gracefully among the shelves, their gloved hands delicately skimming the displayed treasures. There was a hypnotic quality to their movements, as if they were swaying to an unseen melody. I couldn't help but watch their every gesture, noting how the light seemed to behave oddly in their presence. Shadows deepened, thickened, as though possessing a life of their own. Coming to a halt before an antique mirror from the 18th century, a recent addition to my collection, they tenderly traced the golden frame with deliberate strokes. The silence in the shop grew weighty, punctuated only by the measured ticking of the clock, each beat elongated. I cautiously tried to catch their reflection in the mirror, only to find with growing disquiet that the glass merely reflected the shelf behind them, as if they were not there at all. Approaching tentatively, the floor creaking beneath my steps, I inquired, "Can I assist you in finding something specific?" My voice barely above a whisper. Slowly, the visitor turned towards me, their features obscured by shadows under the hat. With a fluid motion, they produced a yellowed paper from their coat pocket and unfurled it on the counter beside the cash register. The list, penned in elegant, antiquated script, detailed enigmatic items: a mirror that remembers, a clock that counts backwards, a key that opens forgotten doors. As I perused the list, a chill seemed to descend upon the shop. My breath materialized in wisps of vapor, and the objects on the shelves seemed to stir imperceptibly, as if recognizing something in the visitor's presence. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "but I don't believe I possess these particular items." The visitor stood motionless for a prolonged moment before nodding slowly. Retrieving the paper with grace, they tucked it back into their coat. Making their way to the door, they paused before exiting. Turning slightly, a sound more akin to a whispered thought than a voice emanated from the scarf. "You will." It wasn't a query, but a declaration. The bell chimed once more as they departed, the sound carrying a depth, resonating from afar. Outside, the snow descended steadily, yet for a fleeting moment the flakes seemed suspended, frozen in time. Later that night, after securing the shop, I inspected the antique mirror. Its reflective surface appeared deeper, hinting at hidden depths. The pendulum clock, the faithful timekeeper, had ceased precisely at the moment the visitor had arrived. Since then, every evening as shadows lengthen and light wanes, I find myself watching the door, awaiting the bell's chime. And it seems as though every object in the shop does the same, as if we all share the knowledge that the visitor will return sooner or later. In an antique shop, every object holds a tale, and perhaps, just perhaps, some are yet to embark on their own. Story 14. The night draped the house in a hushed embrace, as the wind whispered a gentle lullaby through the leaves of the ancient tree in the garden. Nestled in the armchair of my bedroom, I watched as shadows waltzed on the walls under the flickering lamplight. Sleep beckoned with its soft touch, yet a peculiar resistance lingered within me. Night after night, a recurring dream had woven its way into my slumber, painting a tapestry of mystery and intrigue. The room's warmth and the steady cadence of the old pendulum clock swayed me into a trance-like state. My gaze fell upon the open diary resting on the desk, its pages adorned with meticulous accounts of the recurring dream. Each entry, penned in my own hand, chronicled the same sequence of events, a a spiraling staircase of gray stone descending into the depths, the distant melody of water droplets echoing, and a grand wooden door adorned with enigmatic symbols. As I traced the words on the pages, a new-found detail caught my eye. In every iteration of the dream, a gradual chill enveloped me as I descended the stairs. My fingers grazed the icy stone, exhaling wisps of vapor into the air. Yet what set this dream apart was the unwavering sense of familiarity that accompanied me, as if the staircase led to a realm known to me despite its unfamiliarity in reality. The closed door at the staircase's base taunted me, its intricate symbols beckoning for decipherment. Each night I drew closer to unraveling their enigmatic dance. The fluid shapes seemed to shift and sway under my touch, imbued with a life force of their own. That evening, a peculiar object caught my attention in the room. Nestled on the nightstand beside the lamp lay an ancient bronze key, its ornate designs mirroring the symbols from my dreams. I grasped it, taken aback by its weight and the frigid touch it exuded. Though its origins eluded me, it felt as though it belonged, an integral part of my existence. With the key clutched tightly in my palm, I settled into bed, the weight of reality grounding me. As slumber claimed me, a shift in the dream unfolded. The spiral staircase, the haunting echoes, the numbing cold, all familiar yet tinged with an unfamiliar energy. Upon reaching the door, the key thrummed in harmony with the carved symbols. With bated breath, I inserted the key into the hidden lock. A melodic click resonated as the door creaked open, revealing not a new chamber, but a mirror reflecting the staircase in reverse, a path leading upward. Awakening to the soft light of dawn filtering through the curtains, the key still nestled in my palm, now pulsating with a warmth that seemed to breathe life. A new page adorned the diary on the desk, its characters akin to the door's symbols, undulating like waves on an ink sea. Since that transformative night, the dream has remained elusive. The key rests on the nightstand, its subtle vibrations whispered in the quiet of nocturnal hours. I ponder the mysteries that await beyond the mirrored staircase, questioning if bravery will one day guide me upward. For now, I find solace in the dancing symbols within the diary, whispering a tale that perhaps requires patience and readiness to unveil. Story 15, the calm sea that night held a mysterious allure. Wrapped in a wool blanket, I sat on the wooden porch, entranced by the gentle rhythm of waves caressing the shore. The full moon cast a silver path on the water, beckoning me to follow it into the horizon. Lost in contemplation, a peculiar sight caught my eye. A green glow, almost phosphorescent, swaying amidst the waves near the shore. Rising slowly from the rocking chair, a faint creak accompanying my movement, I ventured down the weathered steps, embraced by the salty air. Beneath my bare feet, the warm sand led me to the water's edge, where the waves softly kissed the earth. The greenish glow revealed itself as an antique glass bottle, its elegant shape holding a yellowed piece of paper. Retrieving the heavy bottle, its surface covered in a salt patina, I marveled at the hypnotic reflections of moonlight passing through it. The cork, sealed with black wax, cracked yet intact, hinted at secrets within. Back on the porch, the oil lamp's glow illuminated the bottle on the table. Settling into my favorite armchair, the sea's whispers grew louder, as if urging me to unveil the bottle's contents. With deliberate movements, I broke the seal, releasing a fragrance of seaweed, aged ink, and an elusive essence. Inside, a paper rolled and tied with a faded ribbon awaited, its ink sepia-toned and script elegant yet agitated. As I deciphered the message, fragments of phrases emerged. Time flows differently here, and the light is never the same. Intricate sketches of unknown constellations and lunar phases danced alongside the text, captivating my senses. A perfect spiral at the bottom seemed to shift subtly, drawing me deeper into its mystery. The oil lamp flickered oddly, casting elongated shadows that danced to the sea's rhythmic chant. Time slowed, thickening the air around me as if a veil between worlds had been lifted. The message spoke of a realm where dreams and reality intertwined seamlessly, where time ebbed and flowed like water. A chilling realization gripped me. If you are reading these words, it means you too have been chosen. Gazing beyond the paper, the moon's reflection morphed into a geometric pattern, the bottle on the table pulsing with a green light akin to a slumbering heartbeat. Returning the message to its vessel, uncorked, I pondered the sea's silent calling and the enigmatic choice that had befallen me. The night unfolded, stars shimmering on the water, my perception forever altered. Until dawn broke, I remained on the porch, listening to the sea's ancient secrets whispered in the breeze. The bottle's glow waned with daylight, leaving me with unanswered questions. Though the meaning eluded me, that night had left an indelible mark on my soul, and sometimes, under the full moon's gaze, I glimpsed the green glow dancing in the waves, a reminder of hidden depths best left undisturbed. Story 16. Autumn nights weave a tapestry of magic in our quiet neighborhood. The air is crisp, carrying whispers of fallen leaves and the hushed cadence of footsteps on dampened streets. Lately, on my evening walks back from work, a peculiar occurrence has captured my attention. At the intersection of Maple Street and Rose Avenue stands a streetlight unlike the others. Rather than steadfastly illuminating the path with its warm glow, this light behaves mysteriously. As I draw near, it begins to dim gradually, as though concealing a secret from my gaze. Initially, I dismissed it as a mere malfunction, a neglected relic in need of repair. Yet a pattern emerged. The light only wavered in my presence, unchanged for all others who passed beneath it. Curiosity piqued, I decided to investigate further. Leaning against the weathered façade of an Art Deco building, I observed the streetlight from a distance. Its beam cast long shadows and bathed the garden in a soft radiance. With each step toward it, the light faltered slightly until, at a mere 15 feet away, it dwindled to a mere glimmer, casting a faint halo around me. Standing beneath the enigmatic glow, the world seemed to hush, enveloped in a profound stillness. Peering up at the streetlight's glass, I discerned faint markings etched upon its surface, forming an indecipherable design. Just as I reached for my phone to illuminate the engravings, a sudden gust stirred the leaves, and a sense of movement within the glass gave me pause. Subsequently, my nightly route altered to include this peculiar streetlight. Each encounter unfolded in the same ritual: the dimming light, the thickening silence, the sensation of unseen eyes above. Observations revealed subtle shifts in hue and intensity, as if the light communicated through imperceptible variations. One moonlit night, a melodic hum resonated from within the pole, vibrating beneath my touch, hinting at a hidden message. Recording each visit meticulously, I discerned a correlation between the light's behavior and lunar phases. During the new moon, it nearly extinguished as I passed, while on full moon nights, it retained a steady glow. Furthermore, the light consistently regained its brilliance after my passage in precisely 23 seconds, a curious rhythm that intrigued me. Gradually, the streetlight's influence seeped into my routine, compelling me to slow my pace, partake in its silent ceremony. Sometimes I lingered beneath its dimmed halo, captivated by the ethereal hum that seemed to narrate tales of bygone eras. I refrained from seeking a logical explanation, content in the enchantment of this shared mystery. Each evening as I approach, I sense the streetlight's anticipation, welcoming our ephemeral rendezvous in the realm of twilight. Night after night, the dance continues, the light dimming at my passing. Whether electrical anomaly or cosmic enigma, I embrace the enigmatic connection, finding solace in the transient darkness where shadows intertwine with light, unveiling a world beyond the tangible. Story 17. The soft glow of a flickering candle illuminated the stone walls around me as I descended into the depths of the old cellar. Each step I took echoed through the wooden stairs, a sound that had become a comforting companion during my daily visits to retrieve Grandma's homemade preserves. The air down below was cool and musty, carrying with it the familiar scent of earth and aged wood that instantly transported me back to my childhood days. But on this particular evening, a subtle shift in the atmosphere caught my attention. The candle flame danced erratically, defying the stillness of the air, while a thin layer of dust seemed to veil every surface despite my recent presence. The shadows on the walls appeared elongated, reaching towards the darkness that swallowed the bottom of the stairwell. A peculiar sensation gripped me, halting my descent midway. The wooden shelves, which typically ended after a short distance, now seemed to stretch endlessly into the unknown depths. The feeble light of the candle failed to illuminate their far ends, creating an illusion of an elongated corridor before my eyes. The silence enveloped me like a heavy cloak, broken only by the rhythmic thud of my own heartbeat and the distant trickle of water seeping through the ancient stones. Driven by a curiosity that overshadowed my unease, I pressed on. The jars of preserves lining the shelves shimmered faintly in the wavering light, but their labels bore dates far older than I had ever seen. 1980, 1960, 1940. And some so faded that they had become indecipherable. The air grew colder, carrying a musty undertone mingled with the scent of ancient parchments. As I ventured deeper, the rough stone walls transformed into intricate patterns of ancient bricks, adorned with unfamiliar symbols meticulously etched into the stone. Pausing before a particular shelf, my attention was drawn to a singular jar. Crafted from dark glass that seemed to swallow light, it bore a label that defied reason, 1820. Tremors ran through my hands as I lifted the jar, and in the cellar's profound silence, a faint whisper, wordless yet pregnant with meaning, reached my ears. It was as though time itself was murmuring secrets long forgotten, turning the pages of an ancient tome with a gentle sigh. Slowly turning, I caught a fleeting glimpse of blurred figures moving in the shadows, like wisps of memories struggling to take form. A sense of urgency pricked at my senses, urging me to retreat. But when I turned to ascend the stairs, a disquieting realization dawned upon me. The distance I had traversed had inexplicably multiplied, the light at the stairwell's summit a mere speck in the distance, akin to a distant star in a lightless sky. With measured steps and a racing heart, I began the ascent, willing myself to remain composed, counting each step as though seeking solace in routine. The shelves metamorphosed once more, gradually reverting to their familiar appearance, the dates on the jars becoming more current, the walls returning to their original rough-hewn state. Clutching the enigmatic jar dated 1820, I finally reached the top of the stairs, where the warm light of the kitchen enveloped me in a comforting embrace. Placing the jar on the first step, I cast a final glance into the depths of the cellar. A fleeting movement caught my eye, a distortion in the fabric of time itself, a whisper of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. That night, seated in the kitchen with a steaming cup of tea cradled in my hands, I pondered the events of the evening. The once anomalous jar now bore a mundane label, Blackberry Jam 2023. Yet when I uncorked it, a scent unlike any other wafted out, redolent with the essence of time itself, sweet and ancient, akin to a cherished childhood memory. Since that fateful evening, every descent into the cellar has been tinged with a sense of anticipation. The stairs remain unaltered, the shelves stocked with familiar preserves. But in moments of dim light and profound silence, I sense the cellar's latent secrets beckoning to me, hinting at undiscovered temporal enigmas. Perhaps one day, armed with courage, I will venture once more into that infinite corridor to unravel the mysteries that lie at the obscure juncture where time loses its grasp. Story 18. The weariness of a long day clung to me as I entered my study. The soft amber glow of the desk lamp painted gentle shadows on the walls adorned with shelves of books. The familiar scent of aged paper and ink greeted me like an old friend as I sank into my worn leather armchair. My grandmother's gift, my trusty old diary, lay open on the polished wooden desk, exactly where I had left it earlier. But tonight it held a surprise. The last page, once blank, now bore elegant script unlike my own, telling a tale I didn't recall penning. As I leaned in, my breath slowed, drawn into the mysterious words that painted an autumn evening mirroring the one outside my window. Rain tapped a soothing rhythm on the glass, blending with the hushed rustle of pages turning without a hand to guide them. The lamp's flickering light danced, casting shifting shadows that seemed alive. Mesmerized, I followed the narrative's guidance, turning the page as instructed. To my amazement, new words materialized before my eyes, capturing the very sensations I was experiencing. The ink flowed effortlessly, detailing the warmth of the light, the weight of my breath, even the subtle chill that crept down my spine. Spellbound, I rose only to find myself drawn back to the couch, where I watched in awe as the diary's pages continued to fill with prose that seemed to know me better than I knew myself. The room grew cozier, cocooning me in a world where reality blurred with fiction, and time seemed to hold its breath. I closed my eyes, letting the rain's melody carry me into a peaceful trance. Upon opening them, the diary's words had evolved, delving into memories I had long buried, secrets I had never shared. With each sentence, the conversation deepened, bridging gaps in my own understanding. As midnight approached, I realized I had been ensnared in this silent dialogue for hours, lost in a dance of revelations. The final words, simple yet profound, echoed in my mind. Some mysteries don't need solving to be understood. I closed the diary gently, feeling the soft leather beneath my fingertips. Outside, the rain whispered its lullaby, a backdrop to the enigma that had unfolded within those pages. Would the words remain come morning or fade like a wisp of smoke? I retired to bed, stealing a glance at the study before closing the door on the night. The room remained unchanged, yet within me a shift had occurred. The mysteries unraveled in that self-scripted tale had opened a door to a deeper knowing, a truth still elusive but felt in the quiet depths of my being. Night draped the study in its velvety silence, the lamp's glow a silent sentinel to the secrets that lingered. And as I left, I understood that some enigmas are best left untouched, their beauty lying in the wonder they evoke. Story 19. The rain cascaded with a mesmerizing cadence on the roof of the house, orchestrating a natural symphony that enfolded the stillness of the night. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a cup of now-chilled chamomile tea, I idly savored the soothing melody when a subtle anomaly grasped my attention. A faint, nearly imperceptible sound intermingled with the rain's percussion, delicate footsteps that appeared to originate from the basement. Initially, I dismissed it as the routine settling of the old house. Ancient abodes possessed their unique voice, conversing through creaks and gentle sighs. Mine was no exception, particularly on rainy evenings when the humidity coaxed a slight swell from the wooden framework. Yet there was an unfamiliar quality to the manner in which these sounds materialized, as if adhering to a deliberate rhythm, a cadence that eerily echoed human steps. Rising from my seat with deliberate motions, I set the cup on the nearby table. The wooden floor beneath my feet emitted a subtle warmth, residual from the day's warmth. As I approached the basement entrance, the air chilled progressively, as though an icy breath ascended from the stairs. The brass knob felt unexpectedly cold to the touch, and its turn produced a resounding click that reverberated through the house's hush. The descending staircase cloaked in darkness, interrupted solely by a faint azure glow filtering through a small skylight. Methodically, I descended, each step accompanied by the fusion of my own footfalls and the enigmatic ones from before. The basement's signature scent, a blend of aged wood, damp earth, and an indefinable essence, grew more potent as I delved deeper. Within the basement, shadows waltzed across the walls whenever lightning pierced the skylight. Laden shelves adorned with antiquities cast contorted silhouettes that appeared to sway in sync with the rain's tempo. It was then that I discerned an anomaly. Imprinted on the dusty floor were footprints. They deviated from the norm, resembling faint traces of moisture, as if an individual with damp feet had paced in circles at the room's heart. Approaching the footprints cautiously, I endeavored to decipher their origin. The skylight remained intact, devoid of any hint of water seepage. While scrutinizing those enigmatic markings, a movement in my peripheral vision seized my focus. In the basement's dimmest recess, where light failed to reach, a presence seemed to stir languidly. My heart quickened, though not from fear. It was a blend of inquisitiveness tinged with an uncanny sense of familiarity. Advancing toward that obscure corner, the air turned colder still. The footsteps I had heard from above resurfaced, unequivocally originating from no specific location. They encircled the entire space, as if an unseen entity traversed every corner simultaneously. In that moment, a revelation dawned upon me. The footprints on the floor weren't happenstance. They delineated a precise pattern, a spiral converging toward the room's center. Tracing that spiral with my gaze, I observed the freshest footprints. Those nearest to the core retained a dampness, as if freshly made. For what felt like an eternity, I stood transfixed, beholding those traces as they slowly dissipated, evaporating into the frigid basement atmosphere. The footsteps' resonance diminished until merging seamlessly with the rain's relentless cadence outside. Ascending the stairs once more, I carried with me an ineffable sense of tranquility, as though I had borne witness to an ancient, enigmatic ritual recurring since time immemorial within the house's depths. That night, as I readied for slumber, I discerned a metamorphosis in the rain's melody upon the roof. No longer mere droplets striking at random, it seemed to mirror the rhythmic pace of the basement footsteps. Drifting into sleep cradled by that haunting refrain, I pondered whether the footfalls would revisit the following night, and if I would summon the bravery to linger, to unearth the enigma behind those ephemeral footprints etched in the dust. Story 20. In the hush of the night, a thick mist cloaked the world outside, turning the streetlights into faint, twinkling stars. Nestled in my beloved armchair, I found myself entranced by the shadows dancing across the walls of my study, cast by the flickering flame of a lone candle on the nearby table. The aged wooden floor exuded a comforting mustiness, a scent that whispered of years gone by, while the only sound to pierce the quiet was the steady ticking of the pendulum clock. In the midst of this tranquil scene, a peculiar anomaly caught my eye. Amid the familiar shapes moving gracefully on the wall, there lurked one shadow that defied the natural order. While the others swayed in harmony with the flame's dance, this particular shadow seemed to possess a will of its own, exploring the wall's surface with an almost curious intent. At first, I dismissed it as a trick of my weary mind, a byproduct of my late-night labors. But as the days unfolded, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled within me. The shadow appeared sporadically, always in moments of solitude, always when the light waned enough to birth shadows, yet not dim enough to erase them entirely. I encountered it in various corners of the house, each time displaying a shy and enigmatic demeanor. One evening, engrossed in my writing at the desk, I sensed a presence behind me. Turning slowly, I beheld the shadow, unmoving on the closed door of my study, as if observing me in return. It was then that a realization dawned upon me, a realization that sent a shiver down my spine. This shadow, unlike any other, lacked a tangible source. It existed independently, a specter unto itself, neither bound by nor cast from any known object. Silently, I began to communicate with it through gestures and silent movements. In response, it danced upon the wall, weaving shapes that hinted at meaning, only to dissolve before comprehension could take hold. Sometimes a message seemed to materialize, while other times it remained a cryptic dance of lines. As the nights ebbed and flowed, the shadow became a familiar presence, a silent companion in the velvet hours of darkness. When sleep eluded me, I sought it out, anticipating its ethereal ballet amidst the ordinary shadows. It became a guardian of the night, a steadfast presence in the stillness. Despite my efforts to unveil its origins, the shadow remained an enigma, defying all attempts at explanation. Experts speculated on physical anomalies and residual energies, yet none could capture the true essence of its existence. Now, as I pen these words in my armchair, I observe the shadow's gentle movements in my peripheral vision. It has melded into the tapestry of my daily life, a mystery I've embraced without the need for comprehension. I ponder if, in its own way, it contemplates my existence, as I do its own a dance of questions in the silent night. The candle on the table flickers, its flame waning. Soon, the shadow will dissolve into the encompassing darkness, only to reappear with the birth of a new light. And I shall remain here, awaiting its return, engaged in this wordless dialogue between a man and a shadow without form. Story 21, the autumn breeze danced through the trees, serenading a natural lullaby that intertwined with the hushed whispers of the bustling crowd. Seated on my cherished bench in the park, I observed the steady stream of passers-by navigating the paved pathways. The air was brisk, carrying the essence of moist earth and rain-kissed wood. A book rested in my hands, yet my focus was drawn to a faint, almost elusive sensation that had lingered within me for days. It all commenced subtly. One morning during my daily commute, a prickling sensation crept along my neck as though unseen eyes were fixed upon me. I glanced over my shoulder, only to witness the usual throng of commuters hastening towards their destinations. In the days that ensued, the feeling grew in frequency and tangibility. During lunch breaks, grocery runs, and even moments at my treasured cafe, it persisted. As individuals continued to flow past my bench, some solitary, others in pairs, a sense of unease settled within me. Among the familiar faces, I detected a subtle shift, an indefinable alteration. Closing my book, I rose from the bench, opting to embark on a stroll. The sky painted itself in amber hues, casting the first glow of streetlights upon the evening. Step by step along the main avenue, the sensation trailed behind me, akin to an unseen shadow maintaining a constant proximity. Halting before a storefront, feigning interest in the displayed wares, I scrutinized the figures passing in the reflection. A peculiar realization dawned upon me. A particular countenance within the crowd appeared perennially present. Its features remained elusive, seamlessly weaving through the throng with an almost ethereal fluidity. Resuming my walk with heightened vigilance, I veered onto side streets, the crowd dwindling with each turn. Seated upon a solitary bench in a tranquil square, enveloped by aged structures illuminated from within, the chill of the night descended, unveiling the initial stars in the darkening sky. It was then that I discerned a disquieting truth. Not a singular gaze followed me, but many. a rotating cast of onlookers, passing the baton among themselves in a silent, orchestrated ballet. Certain faces recurred more frequently than others, a young woman donning a blue scarf, a bespectacled middle-aged man, a backpack-clad youth. Rising slowly, I made my way home, the weight of those gazes lingering upon my back. The streets now deserted, the sensation intensified within the nocturnal stillness. Perched by my window within the apartment, surveying the street below, the flow of people persisted, transient pauses and continuous strides. Contemplations swirled within me as the city lights flickered to life, illuminating the obsidian panorama. Who were these observers? What quest propelled their gaze? Above all, why me? Inquiries suspended in the air, shrouded by the encroaching night. Since that juncture, I've acclimated to this newfound consciousness. At times, I endeavor to pinpoint my watchers, while on others, I feign ignorance. Yet unfailingly, they linger as shadows skirting the periphery of my routine existence. Amidst the nocturnal quietude, gazing from my window onto the dwindling streets, I ponder if they, too, contemplate my presence from within their abodes, poised for yet another day of this enigmatic waltz of gazes and apparitions. Story 22. The chilly November wind whispered through the dry leaves scattered on the driveway as I gazed at the looming silhouette of the forsaken mansion silhouetted against the heavy, overcast sky. Known as the never-inhabited house, a misnomer of sorts, for it had indeed sheltered a resident long ago, though the memory had faded into obscurity. Stepping closer to the weathered gate, the touch of the cold wrought iron sent shivers through my fingertips. The air carried a unique fragrance of moss and damp stone, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Nature had reclaimed the garden, with tangled brambles and nettles creeping up the weathered walls, yet the mansion retained a haunting elegance in its decay. As a real estate agent tasked with evaluating the property, I had been summoned by the absentee owner, an elderly gentleman residing overseas who had inherited the mansion from a distant relative and now sought to part ways with it. He had never set foot in the house, leaving it to the passage of time. As I ventured through the unkempt garden, a peculiar discovery caught my eye. Amidst the weeds, faint paths seemed to have been recently traveled, hinting at a mysterious presence. Despite assurances from neighbors that the property remained untouched, these traces hinted otherwise. The front door groaned open with a ghostly creak, revealing an interior enveloped in a bluish twilight that seeped through the closed shutters. The air hung heavy with dust and the essence of aged wood as the floor murmured beneath my steps. In the main salon, furniture draped in yellowed sheets loomed like spectral figures in the dimness. Veiled mirrors on the walls played tricks with the light, casting illusions of movement in their clouded reflections. Ascending the stairs, my hand clutched the polished wooden railing, worn smooth by years of unseen hands. On the upper floor, a line of closed doors beckoned, each revealing empty rooms save for a few covered pieces of furniture. It was in the final room that a sense of unease settled upon me. A bedroom likely belonging to a woman bore a thin film of dust disturbed as if by recent touch. A silver brush lay on the dresser beside dark, fresh strands of hair, untouched by time. The perfectly made bed hinted at recent occupancy, a faint impression left by an unseen guest. Just as I turned to depart, a flicker in the mirror caught my eye, a fleeting image of a woman seated upon the bed. Startled, I whirled around, yet the room remained still, though the lingering presence lingered. Descending the stairs hastier than I ascended, I found the salon altered by the shifting afternoon light, casting deeper shadows across the room. The mirrors seemed to watch as I hastened towards the exit. And then a soft sound, barely audible, drifted down from above, a melancholic, ancient melody hummed by an unseen voice. Was it the wind or a trick of my mind? I departed, closing the door behind me, the one silent garden now eerily tranquil. Glancing back at the mansion, a faint glow flickered behind an upper window, a fleeting hint of a presence. In the days that followed, my report on the property was meticulous, detailing the state of the mansion, the required renovations, and its potential worth. Omitted were the details of the hair on the dresser and the haunting melody that lingered in the air. Instead, a cryptic note was added. The property possesses a unique allure that may captivate a discerning buyer. The mansion lingered on the market, a forgotten relic waiting for new life. Occasionally passing by the rusted gate, I paused to steal a glance at the mansion. Each time, a spectral figure seemed to drift through the upper rooms, a silent presence awaiting an unknown visitor. Perhaps the secret of the never-inhabited house was not its abandonment, but the enduring spirit that refused to depart, forever haunting its lonely halls. Story 23. The November rain softly tapped against the windows of Grandma Rose's attic, serenading a natural melody that always brought me a deep sense of tranquility. Returning to this space after many years, now that Grandma had passed on, I found myself surrounded by the comforting scent of aged wood and weathered books. The dim light of twilight filtered through the half-open shutters, casting playful shadows on the vintage wallpaper that adorned the walls. In a forgotten corner beneath a veil of dust, I uncovered Grandma's cherished brass record player, a relic of days gone by, its mechanical arm adorned with delicate floral patterns, and the turntable preserved in pristine condition. Beside it, a collection of vinyl records, their cardboard sleeves worn by the passage of time, stood neatly arranged. As I sifted through the records, my fingers paused on one in particular, a white cover devoid of any titles or authors, save for a thin, gleaming golden border that shimmered in the dim light. Though unfamiliar, this record piqued my curiosity. With an irresistible urge, I decided to play it. The record player hummed to life with a familiar and soothing sound. Carefully placing the mysterious record on the turntable, I lowered the arm. Initially, there was only the gentle crackle of vinyl, then the music began. A waltz, played on the piano, filled the room, but there was an inexplicable quality to the way the notes intertwined. It was as if the music itself was alive, rearranging itself with each revolution of the record. Immersing myself in the enigmatic composition, I fancied catching a whiff of jasmine, Grandma Rose's beloved flower, though it was the heart of winter. Opening my eyes, I observed the shadows in the room moving in a peculiar manner, no longer swaying with the natural light, but dancing to the rhythm of the mysterious melody. Before me on the wall, a figure's shadow twirled in a graceful dance, despite my solitude. As the waltz continued, intertwined with the soft laughter I recognized as Grandma Rose's, a wave of nostalgia and wonder washed over me. Rising from my seat, I approached the window, where in the glass reflection I glimpsed Grandma Rose, young and radiant in her favorite dance attire, spinning elegantly in the attic center. Yet upon turning around, she vanished, leaving only the haunting echoes of her laughter. The record played on until its final note dissolved into silence, leaving behind a transformed room imbued with a newfound warmth and vitality, as if the music had stirred dormant memories within the walls themselves. Retrieving the mysterious record and slipping it back into its white sleeve, I noticed an overlooked detail. A date inscribed in Grandma Rose's elegant script, her wedding day. Below, in nearly imperceptible letters, a message: music is the key to our most precious memories. Since that day, whenever I revisit the attic, I search for that elusive record. Sometimes it reveals itself readily, while other times it hides among the other vinyls. And each time I play it, the melody shifts subtly, offering endless variations of the same cherished memory. The true nature of this record, whether a gift from Grandma Rose or something more mystical, remains a mystery. Yet one thing remains certain. On those rainy evenings, when the record player spins its mysterious tune, the attic is infused with a subtle enchantment, blurring the lines between present and past, reality and memory. In those fleeting moments, Grandma Rose dances eternally forever young, forever joyful in an eternal waltz, bridging the gap between worlds with her timeless grace. Story 24. The gentle wind whispered through the night, carrying with it the earthy scent of rain-soaked soil and night-blooming blooms. Nestled in my cherished armchair, I tuned my senses to the ancient exhales of the house enveloping me. The wooden bones of the structure murmured softly, as though harboring secrets of bygone eras. Amid the hush, a new presence emerged, a rhythmic pulsation echoing from the upper reaches of the hallway. A cadence akin to a door knocker swayed by a phantom breeze, yet its regularity held an entrancing quality. The lamplight cast flickering shadows upon the wallpaper, crafting silhouettes that danced with a life of their own. Setting aside my book, I remained poised, fixated on the persistent beat. Far from grating, it possessed a melodic allure in its constancy. Rising deliberately, my slippers sinking into the plush Persian rug, I embarked towards the stairs. Each step upon the weathered treads elicited a gentle groan, as if the house itself was stirred by my inquisitiveness. The rhythmic throb persisted, unyielding in its tempo, beckoning me through the dimness of the hallway where moonbeams filtered through lofty windows. Upstairs, the air carried a chill redolent of aged timber and beeswax. Trailing the sound, I arrived at the portal of the antiquated library. Shut tight as always, yet the brass knocker continued its measured dance against the sturdy wood. Not a breath of wind stirred. All windows along the corridor were sealed shut. Mesmerized, I observed the weighty knocker sway of its own accord, as though an unseen hand wielded it with infinite patience. Approaching tentatively, nearly hypnotized by the rhythmic motion, I discerned a subtle variation in the beat, as though tracing an enigmatic musical pattern. Extending my hand to the brass handle, the chill of the metal beneath my touch, polished by generations, sent a shiver up my arm. The door was unlocked, yet it resisted my efforts to open it, not obstructed, but rather as if an unseen force on the other side gently held it shut. The knocker persisted, indifferent to my presence, enacting an ancient ritual of its own accord. Nestling against the wall beside the door, I seated myself on the floor and surrendered to the mesmerizing beat. Time slipped away as I absorbed the wordless tale woven by the rhythmic pulse. My eyes drifted shut as my mind wandered through veiled memories of ancient libraries and forsaken tomes. The sound melded with my breath, with my heartbeat, merging seamlessly with the nocturnal symphony. As dawn tiptoed into the hallway, painting it in a soft glow, the knocker stilled, its song silenced as if it had never sung. Rising slowly, my limbs tingling from hours spent on the floor, I reached for the handle once more. This time, the door swung open effortlessly. The library greeted me as I had left it, every book in its rightful place, dust resting undisturbed in the morning light. Yet upon the antique desk, bathed in the sun's first rays, lay an open book I did not recall leaving there, its pages pristine as if awaiting the ink of a storyteller. The brass knocker has since ceased its rhythmic dance, but on the stillest of nights, a faint echo of that beat seems to linger, as if the house endeavors to recall a forgotten melody. Story 25. The night was draped in stillness, broken only by a distant, ethereal melody. Nestled in my beloved armchair, a cozy wool blanket draped over my knees, a forgotten cup of chamomile tea cooling on the table beside me, I lifted my gaze from the book cradled in my hands. The delicate notes wafted through the air like whispers of snow, barely perceptible yet undeniably present. A piano, I was sure of it, weaving a tune unfamiliar yet tinged with a sense of recognition, akin to a hazy memory from a dream long past. The house lay shrouded in darkness, save for the soft glow of a lamp casting a warm circle of light around me, coaxing shadows to dance in silent harmony on the walls. Rising from my seat, the blanket cascading to the floor with a gentle rustle, I treaded softly across the wooden expanse, each step a whispered creak as I gravitated towards the living room window. Beyond, the night enveloped the world in serene quietude. The full moon cast its silvery glow upon the garden, painting the swaying trees in a ghostly light show. Not a stir emanated from the neighboring houses, all cloaked in the embrace of darkness. Yet the melody persisted, its origins elusive, seeming to emanate from every corner and nowhere all at once. Traversing from room to room, a silent seeker in the enigmatic symphony, I sought the elusive source of the ever-shifting melody. In the kitchen, it beckoned from the living room. In the living room, it whispered from the staircase. On the staircase, it descended from the upper floor. A hypnotic waltz of echoes and whispers guided me through the familiar pathways of my abode, a spectral dance of sound and shadow. Ascending to the upper floor, I beheld my bedroom door slightly ajar, a detail contradicting my memory of leaving it wide open that morn. Moonbeams filtered through gossamer curtains, casting intricate patterns upon the floor. The melody, now clearer, more defined, hinted at proximity to its elusive source. Pausing at the threshold, I surveyed the room with intent. My antique music box, a relic gifted by my grandmother and long believed to be broken, gleamed in the muted light. In the nocturnal hush, its miniature ballerina pirouetted gracefully, casting a spectral shadow upon the wall. The melody, identical to the elusive tune that had beckoned me, now swelled in potency, as if the entire abode had transmuted into a resonance chamber. Approaching tentatively, my heart beating in harmony with the music, I noted the music box aglow as if with an inner radiance. As my fingertips grazed its surface, I discerned a surprising warmth emanating from within. The ballerina continued her dance, her once featureless face now bearing the unmistakable likeness of my grandmother, her sweet smile echoing memories of yesteryears. Those familiar eyes seemed to meet mine fleetingly, and in that fleeting gaze, the melody metamorphosed into a lullaby that had cradled me in childhood. Transfixed, I stood transfixed, enveloped in the music's embrace, devoid of fear but suffused with a profound peace and longing. The notes cascaded through the room, ebbing like the tide receding from the shore. As the music waned to a tender hush, the music box sealed itself with a soft click. Silence descended anew upon the dwelling, yet it bore a weighty significance, laden with unspoken truths. Descending to my armchair below, retrieving the discarded blanket to enfold myself once more, I found my book still open to the forgotten page, the words blurring as my thoughts drifted to the enigmatic music box and the spectral visage of my grandmother. I pondered how many melodies lay ensnared within its silent mechanisms, waiting for the opportune moment of release. Since that mysterious night when the hush of the house is profound and the full moon bathes the garden in its ghostly light, a familiar, tender melody suffuses the air. No longer do I seek its source. Instead, I close my eyes, surrendering to its embrace, knowing that some mysteries are meant to be felt rather than unraveled. Story 26, the gentle breeze whispered through the evening, carrying the delicate fragrance of night blooms from the garden. Nestled in my beloved armchair, I idly observed the shadows waltzing on the living room walls, cast by the flickering candlelight. Beside me on the petite table rested my trusty old Polaroid camera, a treasured heirloom from my grandmother. Though it had been ages since I last used it, an inexplicable urge nudged me to reach for it that night. The familiar weight of the camera reassured me as I inspected it in the soft glow. My fingers gravitated towards the shutter button out of habit, emotion ingrained from countless captures in the past. Without much contemplation, I aimed the lens towards the darkest corner of the room and clicked. The flash fleetingly illuminated the space, trailed by the familiar mechanical whir of the snapshot materializing. Patiently, I awaited the image to reveal itself, witnessing the hues materialize on the blank canvas. It was then that I discerned something peculiar. In the photo, within the corner I had seized, a vague silhouette materialized. Indistinct yet ethereal, it seemed to hover in the air, resembling a wispy veil taking on a faint human form. Instinctively, I glanced towards that corner, only to find emptiness. Intrigued, I resolved to capture another image in the same direction. This time, the emerging picture was entirely transformed. The figure appeared more defined, drawing closer to the lens. A semblance of a face emerged, albeit obscured and nebulous. A subtle chill traversed my spine, not born of fear, but of a curious reverence. Compelled, I continued to snap photos, entranced by the unfolding enigma. With each click, the figure inched nearer, gradually sharpening its contours. It was as though it utilized the photographs to materialize, each exposure granting it more substance in our realm. The blurred outlines gradually coalesced, unveiling what seemed to be a vintage attire, possibly from the 1940s. The room's silence deepened, nearly tangible. The atmosphere thickened, pregnant with a presence unseen yet keenly felt. The temperature subtly dropped, and the candle flame flickered sans a draft. Methodically, I persisted in capturing the evolving spectacle, relishing each moment of this eerie silent discourse. In the final photo of that evening, the figure loomed so near it almost filled the frame entirely. I could discern a gentle smile on the woman's countenance. Her eyes appeared to bore into mine through the glossy Polaroid surface. Something eerily familiar resonated in that visage, stirring dormant recollections from my youth. It was only when I rose to retrieve an ancient photo album that I noticed my hands quivered slightly. Leafing through the faded pages, I stumbled upon the sought-after memory, a vintage picture of my grandmother as a young woman, captured with the very same Polaroid. The smile mirrored, identical to the one immortalized in the final photograph. Delicately arranging the snapshots from that night on the diminutive table, I arranged them chronologically. Collectively, they silently narrated a tale of a bridge connecting two realms, crafted through the lens of an antiquated camera. I refrained from attempting to replicate the phenomenon, returning the Polaroid to its rightful place on the shelf. Even now, on tranquil evenings when the light assumes that ethereal sunset hue, I ensconce myself in the armchair, gazing upon those photos. At times, it appears as if the smile in the image subtly shifts, as though my grandmother endeavors to convey a message. In those fleeting instances, the demarcation between the realm of memories and reality blurs, akin to the filmy surface of a freshly developed Polaroid. Story 27. The winter twilight draped my bedroom walls in shades of royal purple, as gentle raindrops tapped against the window like a soothing melody. A solitary candle flickered on my antique vanity mirror, a cherished heirloom from my grandmother, casting dancing shadows that swirled and twirled in the dimming light. The warm aroma of burning firewood wafted from downstairs, mingling with the sweet scent of wax, enveloping me in a cocoon of comfort. Amidst this tranquil ambience, a peculiar sight caught my attention. While tidying my hair before the mirror, a fleeting glimpse of a tall, slender figure seemed to glide behind me, an ethereal presence moving with silent grace. Startled, I turned swiftly, only to find emptiness enveloping the room. Returning my gaze to the mirror, I dismissed the apparition as a mere trick of light and shadow. In the days that followed, I found myself drawn to reflections like a moth to a flame. The polished sheen of a freshly cleaned wooden table, the evening glow reflected in the window pane, even the tiny mirror in my car, all seemed to capture fleeting glimpses of that mysterious figure. It was as though a parallel world of reflections existed, where this enigmatic being observed me with a quiet curiosity. This figure, devoid of distinct features, exuded a soft, silvery luminescence, appearing almost ethereal in nature. At times, a gentle smile seemed to flicker across its formless face, or a subtle movement of hands suggested an attempt at communication. Rather than fear, a sense of familiarity enveloped me, as if this presence had always lingered at the periphery of my existence, waiting to be acknowledged. One serene evening, while lost in a book within my favorite armchair, the figure in the window's reflection appeared more defined than ever before. Instead of vanishing upon direct gaze, it lingered, a silent companion sharing the stillness of the room. A phantom rustle, like silk stirred by an unseen breeze, teased my senses, defying the calm air. Slowly, I rose and approached the window, mirroring the figure's movement from the other side of the glass. Details began to emerge, flowing, ethereal garments, movements as graceful as a dance suspended in midair. As the figure extended a hand towards me, a reflexive gesture mirrored my own. In that moment, a revelation dawned upon me. Each appearance of the figure brought a profound sense of peace into the room. Sounds dulled, colors softened, and time itself seemed to stretch and slow, as if bridging the gap between reality and reverie. Seeking out reflections became a deliberate act, no longer driven by fear or curiosity, but by the pursuit of that elusive serenity the figure carried in its wake. It appeared most frequently in moments of quiet clarity, when worries and anxieties retreated, as if attuned to the rhythm of my innermost thoughts. It was as though this spectral presence possessed an innate understanding of when I needed solace the most. With the passage of time, the figure in the reflections became a silent companion, a comforting presence woven into the fabric of my days. I refrained from unraveling its true essence or the purpose behind its visits, recognizing that certain enigmas were meant to be embraced rather than dissected. Sometimes, the mystery itself held more value than any definitive answer. Even now, as the sun sets and shadows lengthen across the room, I pause to seek out reflections, attuned to the subtle dance of light and shade. In those hushed moments when the world holds its breath, I catch a glimpse of it, a radiant figure moving amidst the mirrored surfaces, imparting a profound tranquility and a gentle reminder that some mysteries are best left unsolved. Story 28. The autumn wind whispered gently through the rustling leaves as I meandered down the rural road, basking in the warm hues of the setting sun that painted the sky in a canvas of oranges and purples. The GPS had long given up its guidance, but I felt no sense of worry in my bones. I believed I knew these lands, or so I thought. The dirt path wound lazily amidst hills adorned with barren vineyards, while the crisp air wafted in through the cracked window, carrying the earthy fragrance of moist soil and fallen foliage. In that fleeting moment, time itself seemed to stretch, allowing me to savor each passing second. A weathered wooden sign beckoned me to turn right, its ancient features hinting at mysteries untold. It was then that a peculiar realization dawned on me. This road was a stranger in the familiar landscape of my mind. I paused, attempting to reorient myself as the shadows lengthened, casting enchanting silhouettes among the trees that lined my path. Beneath my wheels, the road was unnaturally flawless, devoid of the usual marks of neglect found on forgotten country lanes. Not a single pothole or crack marred the smooth asphalt that seemed to vanish into the encroaching evening mist. Leaves twirled lazily in the air, as though time itself had slowed to a languid pace in this secluded realm. Proceeding cautiously, I observed the surroundings with a burgeoning curiosity. The trees that flanked the road appeared ancient and twisted, their canopies entwining above like a natural archway, filtering the dimming twilight. In the distance, faint lights flickered like misplaced fireflies, dancing gracefully between the tree trunks, appearing and vanishing like fleeting memories. The silence enveloped me, palpable and profound, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the whisper of leaves stirred by the breeze. Advancing further, subtle shifts in the landscape caught my attention. The boundaries blurred as if painted by an unseen hand, while the shadows deepened in a non-threatening embrace. Reality itself seemed to soften, its edges melting into a dreamlike haze. A brass mailbox caught my eye by the roadside, its gleaming surface betraying its age. Intricately engraved with a compass rose, it bore no name or address. When I reached out to touch it, a faint warmth seemed to emanate from the metal, a stark contrast to the cool evening air. The road continued its sinuous path, revealing increasingly curious details. Dimly glowing milestone stones lined the edges, their light seeming to emanate from within rather than without. The sky above me assumed an indescribable hue, a color foreign to the known spectrum, while stars emerged, casting an otherworldly glow. After what felt like an eternity, or perhaps a mere moment, I ascended what appeared to be the crest of a hill. A circular clearing unfolded before me, its ancient stones paving the way to a weathered lamppost standing sentinel in the center, casting a warm, inviting glow. Stepping out of the car, the air hung eerily still, as though time itself held its breath. In the distance, the lights of the city I had departed from twinkled, distant and detached, as if veiled by an unseen curtain. Surveying the panorama, I noticed a transformation in the road behind me. No longer the modern asphalt I had traversed, it now lay paved with weathered stones, etched by the passage of countless travelers. Yet I was certain of driving on a different surface mere moments before. Retrieving a map from the glove compartment, I scrutinized it under the lamppost's glow. As suspected, the road I journeyed upon remained absent from the map, as if existing solely in the realm of dreams. Folding the map, a sudden gust made it quiver in my grasp. For a fleeting moment, golden lines seemed to materialize on the paper, tracing a faintly glowing path before fading away. Blinking in disbelief, the vision dissipated, leaving me in the surreal stillness of that place, a sanctuary of tranquility. When at last I resolved to depart, I noticed the lamppost had extinguished silently, shrouding the road ahead in darkness. Yet an unspoken assurance guided me homeward as I drove towards the city, stealing glances in the rearview mirror. The lamppost rekindled, its light dwindling with each passing mile, leaving behind a trail of golden luminescence, as though stardust had been scattered upon the road unbeknownst to cartographers. In the days that ensued, I endeavored to rediscover that enigmatic road, crisscrossing the countryside in search of the elusive path. Every fork, every byway was explored, yet the road with its solitary lamppost and luminous stones remained as elusive as a half-remembered dream upon waking. The sole testament to my sojourn was a faint golden trace upon my aged map, visible only under a certain light, a clandestine secret awaiting its rediscovery. Story 29, the pitter-patter of raindrops on the roof wove a hypnotic melody as I settled in for another solitary evening in my quaint country abode. The droplets traced sinuous paths down the window, casting intricate patterns that swayed in the soft glow of candlelight I had kindled to stave off encroaching darkness. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves of the garden trees, their rustling a soothing lullaby of nature. Nestled in my cherished armchair, cradling a steaming cup of tea, I idly watched wisps of vapor spiral into the air. The house murmured its familiar symphony, the faint creak of aging timber, the rhythmic ticking of the hallway clock, the gentle whistle of wind sneaking through crevices. All seemed ordinary, yet an indefinable unease crept into my tranquil evening. It was as I sipped my tea that I first glimpsed the anomaly. The upstairs bedroom window, reflected in the hallway mirror, exuded a peculiar luminosity, as though a hidden candle flickered within. But I knew for certain that room lay dark and empty. Setting down my cup on a nearby table, I rose languidly and made my way to the staircase. Each wooden step groaned beneath my weight, a sound familiar from years of residence in this dwelling. But on this night, each creak carried a different cadence, as though the house itself sought to convey a message. The air chilled as I ascended, a fine mist seeming to cling to the walls of the upper corridor. Pausing before the bedroom door, I hesitated briefly before turning the icy brass handle. With a faint squeak, the door swung open to reveal the chamber shrouded in shadow. The window, the same I had seen reflected in the mirror, remained shut. Yet to my astonishment, the lock began to shift of its own accord, guided by unseen hands. The window inched open, propelled by an invisible force, the gentle rain entering the room carrying a scent of antiquity, of dried blooms and aged wood. Drawing near, I observed the raindrops pirouetting in midair, forming intricate circles before alighting on the floor in hushed reverence. And then a wondrous sight unfolded before me. Invisible script materialized on the misted window pane, as if an ethereal hand inscribed cryptic messages in the condensation. Though the words blurred, my heart quickened with a steady intensity. The curtains swayed gently, devoid of any discernible draft, their motion akin to the rhythmic breaths of a slumbering being. Moonlight filtered through rain-laden clouds, cast flickering shadows on the walls, silent tales whispered in their dance. Reaching out a hand, I felt the chill of the outside air caress my fingertips. Just as I neared the glass, the window closed softly, the lock clicking into place with a delicate finality. Ancient aroma dissipated, leaving me rooted in place, listening to the continuing patter of rain outside. The room had reverted to its normal guise, yet a subtle shift had occurred. It was as though the house had granted me a glimpse into another realm, one veiled from our sight, revealed only in those fleeting moments when reality and enigma converge as delicately as silk. Since that fateful night, whenever rain falls, I settle into my armchair and observe the window's reflection in the hallway mirror. Sometimes it remains still, other times it opens gradually, in a silent ritual now woven into the fabric of my existence. The source of this phenomenon eludes me, but I have come to embrace it as a fragment of my home's mystery, a secret shared solely between myself and these ancient walls. And on the stillest of nights, when the wind whispers through the trees and rain cascades softly, I almost sense a familiar presence watching over me. An unseen guardian choosing to dwell within these walls, manifesting through a window that opens of its own accord. Story 30, the autumn mist wrapped the streets in a soft, gray embrace, transforming each streetlight into a hazy halo in the dark of night. It was after a long day at work when I first became aware of it, a pair of headlights in the fog, always at a steady distance behind me. What caught my attention was the faint sensation, like a murmur in my mind, hinting at something peculiar about how that car maintained its unchanging proximity, corner after corner. The gentle hum of the engine trailing me felt like a patient exhale, perfectly syncing with the cadence of my journey. As I slowed down, it slowed down. When I picked up speed, it mirrored my actions. Peering into the rearview mirror, all I could discern was a shadowy figure, perhaps a sedan, its headlights resembling vigilant eyes that never strayed from me. The road meandered through the quiet neighborhood, the still houses exuding an air of serenity that clashed with my mounting disquiet. Curiosity nudged me to experiment. Instead of veering onto my usual street, I continued straight, opting for a longer path. To my intrigue, the car persisted in following me, holding onto that hypnotic distance that now felt strangely familiar. The patter of rain on the windshield introduced a soothing melody, a stark contrast to the peculiar situation unfolding. Raindrops cascaded down the windows, further distorting my view of the persistent presence trailing me. I made a series of turns onto side streets, yet the silent pursuit persisted, as if we were bound by an unseen tether. The headlights trailed behind me steadfastly, never encroaching too near, never lagging behind. While the neighborhood slumbered, oblivious to our nocturnal pas de deux, we continued our eerie dance through the night. Coming to a halt at a red light, I caught a glimpse for the first time of something more through the rain-splattered windshield of the car tailing me. A figure seated in the driver's seat, as motionless as a statue. When I eventually decided to head home, the car remained in tow, unwavering as a shadow. Pulling into the driveway and cutting the engine, a sudden hush enveloped me, punctuated only by the rain's gentle tap on the car roof and the steady thud of my heartbeat. Glancing into the rearview mirror, I observed the car come to a gentle stop several yards away, its headlights piercing the darkness, a silent sentinel. Minutes stretched out like elastic, each one feeling like an eternity. Then gradually the headlights flickered off. In the dimness of the street, I could still discern the outline of the vehicle. Summoning my courage, I stepped out of the car, shielded from the rain by my jacket. But as I turned to scrutinize the scene, the street lay empty. There was no sign of the car that had trailed me throughout that eerie journey. Since that fateful night, whenever I drive post-dusk, an inexplicable urge compels me to glance into the rearview mirror more frequently than usual. And on occasions when the fog thickens, I swear I catch a glimpse of those familiar headlights in the distance, patient and expectant. I find myself pondering whether that car still prowls the night in pursuit of another, or if it bides its time, waiting for the opportune moment to resume our ethereal dance through the city's nocturnal labyrinth. Story 31. In the hush of the night, my footsteps reverberated through the ancient wooden hallway. Each creak of the floorboards harmonized with the gentle rhythm of raindrops tapping against the window panes. A sweet fragrance lingered in the air, a blend of aged wood and musty paper. Pausing before the door at the hallway's end, the one I had kept locked away for months, I noticed a faint gleam from the lock under the soft glow of the wall lamps. I distinctly remembered securing it last, turning the key thrice and ensuring the handle was secure. It was a ritual that brought me comfort, a habit I never deviated from, but on this particular evening something felt different. The air surrounding the door carried a chill, and a delicate layer of dust had settled on the brass handle, forming intricate patterns that seemed to beckon me closer. As I leaned in for a closer look, I observed the dust arranged in tiny concentric circles, as if an unseen hand had traced ephemeral designs. The wood of the door emitted a subtle warmth, a sensation only discernible by pressing my palm against its surface. A curious anomaly, considering the room had remained sealed and devoid of any source of heat. Placing my ear against the door, I strained to listen. Amidst the profound silence, a faint sound reached me, akin to the gentle inhale and exhale of a slumbering presence. Retrieving the key from my robe pocket, I was surprised by its warmth against my fingers. With deliberate caution, I inserted the key into the lock, attempting to turn it without a sound. The key slid in smoothly, yet as I tried to rotate it, a resistance met my efforts, as though the lock had been altered from within. A rapid flutter stirred in my chest, not born of fear, but a blend of curiosity and anticipation, akin to the feeling before an important revelation. Switching the direction of the key, it twisted effortlessly this time, emitting a faint click. Upon swinging the door open, a waft of warm, fragrant air greeted me, reminiscent of freshly brewed vanilla tea. Moonbeams filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a luminous silver sheen upon the room. Everything appeared familiar, yet subtly transformed. The books on the shelves, now arranged in a novel configuration, weaving unseen patterns. The antique armchair had shifted slightly towards the window, beside it an empty porcelain cup whose placement eluded my memory. Approaching the mahogany desk, my fingers trailed along its polished surface, the dust unevenly dispersed as if words once inscribed had vanished. Nestled beside the inkwell lay a weathered sheet of paper, bearing a single sentence scribed in a handwriting resembling mine, though I had no recollection of penning it. The words read, "Time flows differently here." As I absorbed the message, my breath synchronized with the gentle billowing of the curtains, devoid of any breeze. The silence within the room pulsed with a muted vitality, as though concealing a myriad of whispered secrets. Sinking into the plush velvet of the armchair, I glimpsed the room's reflection in the window pane. Fleetingly, a blurred figure seemed to move in the shadows behind me, yet upon turning, only the moon's play of light met my gaze. Shutting my eyes briefly, I surrendered to the encompassing stillness. Upon reopening them, the room appeared subtly altered, each object minutely shifted. The cup now bore a warmth to the touch, a wisp of steam spiraling upwards. Rising from the chair, I carried the weight of enigma that enveloped the space. As I treaded towards the door, my footsteps fell soundlessly upon the wooden floor. Pausing at the threshold, I cast a final glance back. The room seemed to exhale softly, akin to a slumbering entity. With a gentle closure, I turned the key in the lock, the conclusive click resonating like a lullaby within the hallway's silence. Since that night, each time I pass by the closed door, a faint aroma of vanilla tea greets my senses, accompanied by the whisper of pages turned by unseen hands. Though I have not ventured to unlock the door again, I am aware the room harbors its clandestine existence, safeguarding mysteries that perhaps are best left undisturbed in their silent repose. Story 32. Under the soft patter of rain on the roof of the ancestral home, I delved into the remnants of my grandmother's legacy, sifting through the final boxes. Nostalgia hung heavy in the air, mingling with the fragrance of aged wood and swirling dust particles basking in the golden hues of the setting sun streaming through the cream drapes. Each item I unearthed seemed to whisper tales of yesteryears, painting vivid recollections in my mind. Amidst the treasures within the last box lay a weathered photo album, bound in dark leather. Though the corners were worn, the touch of time had bestowed upon it a tender patina. Placing it gently on the antique oak table, I ran my fingers over its surface, feeling the essence of history seep through my skin. The pages exuded a faint scent of must and antiquity, each black and white photograph capturing snippets of family life. Weddings, birthdays, lazy summer days. Smiling faces of kin, frozen in time, bridging the gap between generations. The rustle of pages harmonized with the rain's symphony against the window panes. A particular photo, taken in the garden under the summer sun, drew me in. There, amidst familiar faces, stood an enigmatic figure clad in a pale dress and a shadowed hat obscuring her features. She lingered on the periphery, a silent presence unknown to the family lore passed down over the years. Intrigued, I scrutinized the image, feeling a chill glide through the room as daylight waned, casting shadows of uncertainty. Switching on the table lamp, its warm glow enveloped the room, casting a soft embrace over the photograph. As my gaze returned to the mysterious figure, a disquieting realization dawned upon me. The direction of her shadow defied logic, a subtle anomaly in a tapestry of light and shade. Memories surfaced of hushed conversations between my mother and aunt, alluding to a transient woman who vanished without a trace, her identity shrouded in mystery. The rain's cadence intensified, weaving a hypnotic spell around me. The figure in the photo appeared to sharpen, her presence growing more defined as if beckoning me to unravel the enigma veiled within the frame. Turning the photograph, faint markings in the corner caught my eye, a barely discernible inscription, "She always sees." Straining under the lamplight, I deciphered the cryptic message etched on the edge of perception. Returning the photo to its rightful place, I hesitated to close the album, sensing a hidden narrative yearning to be unveiled. How many untold stories lay dormant within these walls? How many secrets lay concealed behind the lens of a camera, frozen in the recesses of time? Night descended tranquilly, enfolding the house in a cloak of serenity as I sank into the armchair, the album resting on my lap, lost in contemplation. Who was she, this mysterious woman, and what truths did she guard? Did her gaze linger still, traversing the realms of past and present? Leaving the album open on the table, I retired for the night, stealing a final glance from the doorway. In the wavering lamplight, a fleeting illusion seemed to suggest the figure had shifted, as if casting her gaze upon me. Yet it could have been a mere trick of shadows, a mystery fated to linger, ensconced within the time-worn pages of a family chronicle. Story 33, A Night of Whispering Shadows. Silence embraced the winding streets of the quaint hillside town like a soft, velvety cloak. It was an autumn evening, the air thick with the scent of burning wood and damp leaves, as tendrils of fog slithered through the narrow alleyways like a ghostly cat. From my perch on the third floor, I peered out at the neighboring houses, their windows aglow with a warm, amber light. It struck me as odd to see so many lights ablaze at this late hour, yet no signs of life stirred behind the misty panes. The church bell chimed 10 times, its toll ringing hollow in the night, as if veiled in a shroud of cotton. Though I had only recently arrived in this town 3 weeks prior, I had never before witnessed such an eerie stillness blanketing the streets. Normally, even at this late hour, a solitary figure would amble by with their faithful hound, or the youthful denizens from the corner pub would linger under the flickering street lamp, sharing stories over a cigarette. Settled in my favorite armchair, cradling a cup of chamomile tea, I observed the absence of even the usual stray cat that prowled Mrs. Miller's windowsill. The steam spiraling from my cup twirled lazily in the air, forming fleeting shapes that dissolved into the darkness of the room. I had chosen to keep only a small reading lamp aglow, casting gentle shadows on the cream-hued walls, creating a realm of serenity amidst the enigmatic night. A sudden rustling stirred from the hallway leading to the bedroom, a soft sound akin to the whisper of paper being caressed by a gentle breeze. Intrigued rather than frightened, I rose from my seat, placing the cup delicately on the wooden side table by my side. As I approached the hallway, I perceived a drop in temperature, not a harsh chill of winter, but a coolness reminiscent of stepping into an ancient sanctuary. The floorboards murmured beneath my cautious tread, their familiar creak offering an odd sense of reassurance. Upon reaching the threshold of the bedroom, I paused. The door stood slightly ajar, emitting a faint bluish light that differed from any other illumination in the house. Pushing the door open with a soft creak, I beheld a scene where the curtain fluttered as if stirred by an unseen breath. Nestled on the floor beneath the window lay a single sheet of paper. Drawing nearer, I recognized it as a newspaper page, its header declaring October 15, 1954, with the headline capturing my immediate attention, Mysterious Night of Silence in Pine Grove. The article recounted a night when the townsfolk had retreated into their homes, as if compelled by an unspoken pact whose origin had faded into obscurity. As I perused the text, a movement outside the window snagged my gaze. Across the street, the lights in the houses flickered out one by one, akin to candles extinguished by a phantom breeze. Yet within the darkened interiors, motionless silhouettes stood like silent sentinels, their gaze fixed upon the deserted street. A vibration in my robe pocket jolted me, a message from the building's WhatsApp group flashing on my screen. Tonight, remain indoors, it is crucial. Peering out the window once more, I noted that all the lights had now dimmed, save for mine. In the deepening hush, I discerned the gradual deceleration of my heartbeat, as if harmonizing with an ancient, cryptic rhythm. Seating myself on the edge of the bed, still clutching the newspaper clipping, I marveled at the paper's remarkable softness, as though it had been handled countless times. Beyond the window, the fog had thickened, enveloping the streetlights in a milky haze. From my vantage point, the entire main thoroughfare lay deserted, a ghostly tapestry unfurled before me. The article's words echoed in my mind. Witnesses from that era had attested that come morning, none could recall the events of that silent night. The townsfolk had resumed their daily routines as if untouched by the mysterious occurrence, yet sporadically the phenomenon would recur. Rising slowly, I made my way to the light switch. Before extinguishing the glow, I cast a final glance out the window. The fog now swirled in sinuous, almost choreographed patterns, hinting at elusive figures that danced within its ethereal embrace, like shadows adrift in a sea of opalescent mist. With the room plunged into darkness, I settled upon the bed, fully clothed. The silence deepened, broken solely by the steady ticking of the clock on the nightstand. As slumber beckoned, I pondered whether come morning I would retain memories of this night, or if I, like the town's denizens, would be oblivious to the enigmatic cycle that wove through our lives. The last vestige of consciousness before sleep claimed me was the distant tolling of midnight bells, their chime resonating strangely muted, as if emanating from a realm beyond time, where silence reigned as the primordial language of all beings. Story 34. The soft rhythm of rain against my window had become a constant companion during my late-night writing sessions. Each droplet followed a glistening path down the glass, painting a shifting canvas of watery light. My desk lamp cast a warm amber glow around me, shrouding the room in cozy shadows. I found solace in studying the raindrops, tracing patterns in their wandering trails. But on this night there was a subtle shift in their dance. The water moved in mysterious ways, as if guided by an unseen force. Initially, I brushed it off as fatigue playing tricks on my eyes. The gentle rain almost lulled me into a dreamlike state, teetering on the edge of consciousness. Yet the peculiar patterns persisted, growing more defined with each passing moment. Droplets avoided specific areas on the glass, forming dry patches that slowly outlined a figure. Intrigued, I drew closer to the window. The reflection revealed not only the rain, but also the dim interior of my room behind me. And there, within that layered mirror of glass and water, I noticed a peculiar discrepancy in my own reflection. It moved slightly out of sync with my actions, as if echoing them with a fraction of delay. The rain's soothing melody filled the room, wrapping me in its tranquil embrace. Mesmerized, I watched as my reflection's hand reached out to touch the glass, a movement I did not replicate. It glided gracefully, as if following a choreography unknown to me. A gentle warmth enveloped me, contrasting the cool air by the window. Gradually, the features of my reflection began to transform, evolving into something both recognizable and enigmatic. The eyes held a wisdom that transcended time, depths that hinted at untold stories. Motionless, I witnessed as my reflection underwent a subtle metamorphosis. The face blurred the lines of gender and age, embodying a sense of timelessness. The rain weaved intricate patterns around it, like a frame of liquid silver, defying gravity in circular motions. A flicker from my desk lamp momentarily dimmed the room, and in that fleeting darkness I sensed a presence beside me, gentle and comforting. As light returned, my reflection mirrored my movements flawlessly, yet the rain continued its mesmerizing dance, a testament to the extraordinary encounter. I remained by the window for hours, contemplating the enigmatic visitation. The lingering presence felt like a cherished melody, neither unsettling nor obtrusive. With the approaching dawn, the rain dwindled, leaving behind ordinary streaks on the window. On subsequent rainy nights, I found myself drawn to that window, abandoning pen and paper on my desk. In moments when the rain created a perfect mirror, I caught glimpses of that other self observing me through the glass. A silent understanding passed between us, acknowledging that some mysteries were meant to be embraced rather than unraveled. The rain persisted, each droplet carrying the promise of another ethereal encounter. And in the quiet interludes between watcher and watched, I pondered if in another realm, another version of myself sat by their own window, yearning for a glimpse of my world through the silver threads of rain. Story 35, the grandfather clock in my study announced midnight with its familiar deep resonance, each chime echoing through the tranquil air like gentle ripples on a pond. Nestled in my leather armchair, an old book cradled in my lap, I savored the soft patter of rain against the window panes. The house murmured softly, its ancient timbers settling into the hush of the night. My gaze wandered to the hallway door, its dark wooden frame illuminated by the warm glow of my reading lamp. Tonight, something felt different about it, though the change eluded my grasp. Perhaps it was the brass handle catching the light in a new way, or the wood's grain appearing subtly altered. Despite 15 years in this house, this door now seemed strangely unfamiliar. Standing up, I marked my place in the book with a silk ribbon. The floor felt cool beneath my slippers as I approached the door, the air growing colder as I neared, as if winter had seeped into this corner of my home. My fingers brushed the handle, surprised by its unexpected warmth amidst the chilly atmosphere. The door swung open effortlessly, revealing the unchanged hallway beyond the same faded wallpaper, worn carpet, and familiar photographs adorning the walls. Closing the door, I chuckled at my own fanciful thoughts, attributing the strangeness to an overactive imagination fueled by mystery novels. That night my dreams were filled with doors. They materialized in improbable locations amidst gardens, hovering in the sky, solitary on deserted beaches. Each bore the same warm brass handle as my hallway door, a curious comfort despite their surreal settings. Upon waking, I went about my day as usual, scarcely sparing a glance for the door as I passed through it. Yet as evening approached, a peculiar sight caught my eye. The door appeared lighter in hue, as if aged overnight. The brass handle now bore a patina previously unseen. Drawing closer, I scrutinized the changes with a photographer's eye. The wood had indeed transformed lighter and with an unfamiliar grain. Even the hinges had shifted from iron black to a burnished copper hue. Still, the hallway behind the door remained unchanged. Night after night, the door underwent subtle alterations. Its appearance would fluctuate, sometimes aging, sometimes rejuvenating. The handle would shift positions, the frame gaining or losing intricate carvings. I meticulously recorded each change in a journal, capturing them with precise sketches and detailed descriptions. The transformations always occurred unnoticed, during the deepest nocturnal hours when the house slumbered and my attention wandered elsewhere. One evening I resolved to observe the door throughout the night. Facing it directly in my armchair, a pot of tea at hand, I embarked on my watchful vigil. The grandfather clock ticked away as I fought drowsiness, my resolve unyielding. At 3:17 a.m., a flicker of the lights signaled a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. When the illumination stabilized, the door had metamorphosed once more. The warm oak now gleamed with rich mahogany, delicate silver inlays dancing across its surface when viewed askance. Intrigued, I reached for the handle, now intricately carved crystal, but hesitated, sensing a faint vibration in the air around the door, like a resonating bell. Another peculiarity caught my attention. The door bore no keyhole, never had one in any iteration. Yet each morning a keyhole had always existed beneath the handle. This realization unsettled me. Delving into my journal, I searched in vain for any mention of the keyhole. Had I overlooked such a fundamental detail, or was something more enigmatic at play? The question lingered, a persistent whisper at the edge of consciousness. Now each evening in my study, I ponder the enigmatic door and its nightly transformations. At times, I glimpse alternate hallways beneath it with different carpets, wallpapers, and photographs. Yet upon opening the door, my hallway remains unchanged. Contemplating rearranging the photographs for confirmation, a silent caution restrains me, warning against delving too deeply into the unknown spaces between perception and reality. The door continues to evolve, each night ushering a new variation. I've grown accustomed to its silent metamorphoses, even finding solace in their mystery. Perhaps the door isn't changing at all, but rather my perception of it shifts with each viewing. Both truths may coexist, or perhaps neither holds sway. Yet one certainty remains as the grandfather clock tolls midnight and rain whispers against the windows. I await with anticipation the unveiling of the door's next form, and the secrets it may choose to unveil or conceal in the tranquil hours before dawn.